C1345 Desolate Continent. Chapter 1345 Desolate Continent. During his 6-hour break, instead of using that time to recover his energy, Huang revisited the memories he had recovered from Giant Emperor Kulas, endeavoring to make peace with them and find a sense of reconciliation within himself. The memories began when he arrived at a certain familiar dock, the very place where Huang had initially encountered the Huang family during his trial in the lower heaven. However, unlike Yuan's trial, Tianyang was not aware of the Huang family, so he didn't bother looking for them. Instead, he went to a nearby restaurant to fill his stomach. Silver Peak Restaurant, huh? It seems like a decent place to have lunch judging by its appearance. As Tianyang approached the entrance of the restaurant, a sizable gathering of people nearby captured his attention. The group of people were standing before this tall and bulky man, who appeared to be advertising something. I am Dong Zhou, head bodyguard for the Huang family that is currently hiring one more bodyguard for their trip to the Desolate Continent, which will depart later today. The duration of the stay will be 30 days with a salary of 10 million gold coins. 1 million will be paid upon arrival on the Desolate Continent, and the rest will be paid once we return from our trip. Tianyang heard Dong Zhou's advertisement loud and clearly, but he ignored it and went inside the restaurant. Welcome. Are you alone? The receptionist greeted him. Yes. Please wait a moment. After taking a moment to look through their availability, the receptionist spoke. Luckily, we still have one small table available. I will bring you to your table. Please follow me. Tianyang nodded and trailed behind the receptionist as they made their way to his designated table, situated by the wall at the far end of the building. As he settled into his seat, Tianyang felt a gaze directed towards him. He cast a glance at the large table adjacent to his, where a family of 4 was seated. The one staring at him was a beautiful young lady, who showed a friendly smile upon realizing that she had been noticed. Fancy seeing you here, senior brother. The young lady seemed to recognize him. Tianyang did not recognize this young lady, but based on how she addressed him, he had an inkling of her identity. Are you a fellow disciple from the Immortal Monastery? He asked. Yes. I am inner disciple Huang Xiaoli. It's an honor to meet you, senior brother. Tianyang smiled at her enthusiasm. You make it sound like I am famous or something. But you are famous. Huang Xiaoli confirmed. You're exaggerating it. Tianyang shook his head. Senior brother, would you like to eat with my family? It's our treat. Huang Xiaoli suddenly suggested. I don't want to impose on your family time. It's fine. The middle-aged man sitting beside Huang Xiaoli said. Then, Tianyang ended up sitting with the Huang family. Senior brother, what are you doing in such a place? Are you in the midst of a sect mission? Huang Xiaoli asked. No, I am out training in preparation for my core disciple examination. Wow, you're already taking the core disciple examination. It's only been 3 years since you became an inner disciple. Huang Xiaoli's eyes were filled with admiration. No, I won't be taking the examination anytime soon. I am simply preparing for it. I probably won't take the examination for another 2 to 3 years. 5 to 6 years is still quite fast, considering that most inner disciples wait at least a decade before they even attempt to do so. Wait a second. If you're here for training, does that mean you're also going to the Desolate Continent? Huang Xiaoli asked after realizing this. Also, you're heading to the Desolate Continent as well? Tianyang raised an eyebrow. Huang Xiaoli was only a 9th level spirit master, so she was probably an inner disciple as well. The Desolate Continent stood as a vast and isolated land, inhabited by powerful magical beasts. It served as a risky training ground for numerous cultivators who sought to increase their cultivation in a short time. In other words, it was a dangerous place that attracted those unafraid of death or individuals desperate enough to risk their lives for strength. However, Huang Xiaoli did not appear to fit that mold, unlike Tianyang. Even Tianyang, who had recently attained the rank of Spirit Lord, could be deemed underpowered for the Desolate Continent, where magical beasts at the level of Spirit Kings and beyond freely roamed. However, Tianyang was used to risking his life to increase his cultivation. That's how he managed to reach Spirit Lord in such a short amount of time when it took him several years, just to sense spiritual energy. Moreover, The desolate continent was rich with undiscovered treasures and held an abundance of rare medicines, drawing the attention of treasure hunters seeking fortune and valuable resources. I am actually here as a bodyguard for my family. We have some business in the desolate continent, Huang Xiaoli said in a somewhat bashful manner, seemingly aware of her lack of cultivation. Although it might appear that she volunteered as a bodyguard to save her family money, the truth was that her family had more than enough resources to afford professional guards far more powerful than her. Her presence was not a necessity for their protection. Instead, driven by a long-standing desire to visit the infamous desolate continent, she chose to accompany her family under the guise of providing protection. I've told her not to follow us, but she was too stubborn about it. Her father sighed. Haha. Huang Xiaoli chuckled sheepishly. Oh, I know. Senior brother, why don't you come with us as a bodyguard? We still have a spot open, and you're more than qualified to join. Of course, we'll pay you appropriately, Huang Xiaoli suddenly suggested, her face beaming with anticipation. C1346 Raging Serpent. Chapter 1346 Raging Serpent. The reward for serving as our bodyguard is 10 million gold coins, but I'll personally add another 10 million just for you, senior brother. Huang Xiaoli expressed her earnest desire for Tianyang's company. Regrettably, Tianyang gently shook his head and spoke in a tone tinged with apology. As alluring as your offer is, my time outside the sect is constrained. I have intentions to venture deep into the heart of the continent, and thus, I must respectfully decline. Ah, is that so? Huang Xiaoli immediately looked disappointed by the refusal. However, she quickly recovered. It's okay, I perfectly understand your situation. I was being inconsiderate with my offer just now, and I apologize for it. No, it's fine. Tianyang smiled. Sometime later. The ship to the desolate continent will depart soon. We should start making our way there, Huang Chen said after noticing the time. You're boarding as well, right? Huang Xiaoli looked at Tianyang. Yes. Having settled the bill for the meal, the Huang family and Tianyang proceeded to the ship by the docks, but not before the Huang family reunited with Dong Zhou and the other bodyguards. I've found another bodyguard, as you desired, Dong Zhou stated before introducing the spirit lord he had hired for the task. Huang Chen nodded and introduced his family to his new bodyguard, as well as his task. If you have any problems, you will consult with Dong Zhou first. If he cannot handle it, he will consult me. Unless there is an emergency, you will not approach me or my family. Do I make myself clear? Yes, sir. Upon reaching the docks, Tianyang observed a lengthy queue of individuals endeavoring to board the colossal ship that blocked most of the ocean view from his perspective. The ship in Tianyang's memories was at least several times bigger than the one Yuan boarded during his trial. Which floor are you staying on? Huang Xiaoli inquired as they waited in line. I'm on the second floor towards the rear of the ship, he said. We're on the 7th floor towards the middle of the ship, so we're quite far from each other. How unfortunate. Huang Xiaoli sighed. With a month until we reach the desolate continent, we'll likely cross paths many times, Tianyang remarked with a smile. I'm looking forward to it. Huang Xiaoli smiled back. Even though they've only just met today, Huang Xiaoli already saw Tianyang as a friend of sorts. Tianyang separated from the Huang family shortly after boarding the ship. Upon entering his cramped and confined room, which only accommodated a wooden bed lacking a mattress, Tianyang seated himself and commenced his cultivation. Several hours later, his cultivation was interrupted by an announcement from the ship's captain. Welcome to the Raging Serpent, esteemed guests. I am your captain until we arrive at your destination, Jiajianhong. It will take us approximately a month to reach the desolate continent. Of course, it could take a little longer or shorter depending on the sea's conditions, and how often we are attacked by the sea demons. The captain already expected the ship to be attacked by sea demons, since that was part of the routine for any ship that traveled to and from the desolate continent. There's also no need to worry about the sea demons, as our experts will get rid of them before you even see one, so you can enjoy yourselves until we arrive at our destination. With that being said, we'll begin our journey shortly. Half an hour later, The ship left the docks and began sailing towards the desolate continent. Nothing notable occurred during the first week of their sail. A few sea demons attempted to attack the ship, but they were dealt with by the spirit lords working on board before even reaching the ship. During this time, Tianyang spent every second cultivating. I have to get stronger so that I can avenge Meng Lily. Shortly after entering the inner court, Tianyang uncovered the truth behind Meng Lily's death. This revelation drove him to pursue strength intensely and relentlessly to seek justice for Meng Lily, earning him the nickname Suicidal Maniac among his fellow disciples. Yet, fueled by this insatiable thirst for strength, Tianyang's cultivation saw advancements that surpassed the dreams of most ordinary disciples. However, this perilous method constantly placed his life in jeopardy. Because of his recklessness, Elder Sun, who ended up as his mentor of sorts, would frequently reprimand him for him. Of course, that didn't change his behavior, or else he wouldn't have decided to train at the desolate continent. On the 8th day of his journey, Tianyang was forced to exit his cultivation by a commotion that was occurring outside his room. Typically, there were constant noises outside his room owing to the thin walls, but this time, the disturbance was not of the ordinary kind. A Leviathan has appeared. We're all going to die. Why did it have to appear now when it hasn't made an appearance for over a decade now? We're screwed. We're all screwed. Tianyang left his room and went to the deck to see the situation for himself. Indeed, the ship had come to a complete stop to confront the Leviathan. Given that the ship's speed was far surpassed by the Leviathan, attempting to outrun it was futile, leaving them with no choice but to engage in combat. Over 50 spirit lords and 3 spirit kings were embroiled in combat with the Leviathan at the beginning. However, by the time Tianyang arrived, half of the spirit lords and one of the spirit kings had succumbed to the Leviathan's onslaught. Meanwhile, the Leviathan itself was as strong as a cultivator at the peak of Spirit King, hence the struggle. One might question why the ship hadn't hired cultivators stronger than spirit kings as a precaution against the potential appearance of a Leviathan. The answer was straightforward: money. Employing a spirit emperor would entail expenses 100 times greater than hiring a spirit king. Given the rarity of Leviathan appearances, with the last occurrence being a decade ago, it wouldn't be financially viable to engage a spirit emperor for every voyage, considering the low probability of encountering a Leviathan. C1347 Leviathan. Chapter 1347 Leviathan. Should I assist them? Tianyang pondered to himself as he watched the experts fight the Leviathan. All the experts battling the Leviathan had cultivations far surpassing his own, and Tianyang lacked experience in confronting sea demons. Nevertheless, the dire situation suggested that the Leviathan might wipe out the experts. In such an event, the ship, along with everyone aboard, would be the Leviathan's next target. Suddenly, the captain made another announcement. Esteemed guests, please try to remain calm, but our ship is currently blocked by a Leviathan. Our experts are already fighting the sea demon to protect the ship, but if you are at least a spirit lord, please lend your hand. You will be greatly awarded for your contributions. Shortly after the announcement was made, several spirit lords including a spirit king joined the fight against the Leviathan. Seeing these cultivators bravely charge into battle with the Leviathan, Tianyang punched himself in the face and shouted at himself. Damn it, Tianyang! Why the hell are you hesitating now? You came out here to train. You have faced death countless times now, so why are you scared now? Fight! Fight, damn it! Tianyang eventually overcame his fear and flew toward the Leviathan. After a gruesome battle that lasted over many hours, Tianyang and the others emerged victorious and slew the Leviathan. However, it was not a victory worth celebrating, as they had lost almost all of their forces to the Leviathan. In the end, only 10 spirit lords and 1 spirit king survived the fight, all of them heavily injured. Thank you. Thank you, heroes. The people on board the ship surrounded Tianyang and the others, showering them with cheers and compliments. Tianyang ignored these people and went straight back to his room. Inside, he consumed a recovery pill and started mending his wounds. Fortunately for him, he came out with the least injuries among all the fighters. Sometime later, Tianyang stopped his cultivation when he heard a knock on his door. Who is it? He called out. It's me. How are your injuries, senior brother? Huang Xiaoli's voice responded. Instead of feeling joy upon hearing her voice, Tianyang's expression shifted to a frown. They are fine. Why are you here? I brought you some medicine just in case. Do you mind opening the door? Tianyang opened the door to see Huang Xiaoli standing outside, and she was accompanied by 2 guards, both spirit lords. Tianyang's frown grew deeper when he saw these spirit lords. He knew that the Huang family had a dozen bodyguards, all of whom were spirit lords. Yet, none of them participated in the battle with the Leviathan. In Tianyang's eyes, their absence from the battle felt like a betrayal to all those who willingly confronted the Leviathan, a spit in their faces. Their selfishness, by abstaining from the fight, seemed like a direct affront, and likely contributed to the increased casualties. Without any hesitation, Tianyang spoke in a cold voice. If you'd truly cared, you would have sent your bodyguards to help. Huang Xiaoli's face was drained of all colors after hearing Tianyang's words, and seeing the cold expression on his face. It's not what you think, she quickly said, fearing that he might close the door in her face if she hesitated even a moment. We told them to fight the Leviathan the moment we realized what was happening. However, they all refused to join the battle no matter how much we asked. I swear. Huang Xiaoli explained the situation to him. I also wanted to join the fight when I saw you fighting with the others, but I was stopped by my father, who told me I would only be running to my grave. Tianyang didn't blame Huang Xiaoli for not participating in the fight, as her father was right when he said that she'd only be walking into her demise by fighting the Leviathan that killed many spirit lords and spirit kings. A spirit master like her wouldn't have lasted even a minute if she were there. Tianyang glared at the bodyguards standing nonchalantly behind her and asked them, Is what she said true? That you refused to fight? Yeah, it's true. What about it? The bodyguard on the right said in a nonchalant tone. We were only hired to protect the Huang family. The Leviathan wasn't our concern, said the other bodyguard. Tianyang frowned and argued back. If we'd lost the fight, the Leviathan would have targeted the ship next, killing everyone on it, including the Huang family. But you didn't, and we're all still alive. If all of you had perished, the Leviathan would have been weakened enough for us to handle, and we would have been safe. Tianyang felt his blood boiling from anger upon hearing their response. Pathetic. And you dare call yourselves cultivators? You're an embarrassment. Tianyang sneered in disgust. What's your problem? Are you trying to pick a fight? The bodyguards glared at him with killing intent. The 2 of you should leave now. Huang Xiaoli suddenly spoke while glaring at them. But we were ordered to accompany you just in case something were to happen. I will be fine with him, so leave. If anything happens to me, you can tell my father that I insisted on being alone. Don't blame us if anything were to happen, cause I won't accept any responsibility. The bodyguards didn't show any hesitation and quickly left the scene. Once they were alone, Huang Xiaoli looked at Tianyang and lowered her head. I'm truly sorry. Please let me apologize on their behalf. Tianyang rubbed his eyes and sighed. Forget it. I am not angry at you. Nor do you have any reason to lower your head for those pathetic bastards. They are still my family's bodyguard, so that only heightens my concern for your safety. Were I in your position, I wouldn't trust my back to them, let alone my life. Instead of protecting, they are the type to use you as bait to escape, Tianyang expressed, emphasizing the lack of trust he would place in such bodyguards. Huang Xiaoli was rendered speechless by his words. Not that she could argue with it. C1348 Huang Xiaoli. Chapter 1348 Huang Xiaoli. After a moment of awkward silence, Huang Xiaoli brought out the medicine she spoke of and asked, If you don't mind, please accept this medicine. It will help with your injuries. All right, I will accept it. Huang Xiaoli quickly continued after hearing his approval. And if you don't mind, can you let me apply it for you? This is a lotion-type medicine. Tianyang wanted to refuse, but he agreed in the end, as he felt a little guilty for misunderstanding her situation, even yelling at her. Okay, come inside. Tianyang moved away from the door, revealing the interior of his room. This is your room? Huang Shaoli expressed shock upon seeing the cramped room. How can you sleep in such a depressing place? I don't. This is good enough for my cultivation. Tianyang said. Still, even my dog's house has more room. Huang Shaoli muttered. You must be used to a rich lifestyle, huh? Tianyang commented. Ah. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay. Even if I had the money, I'd rather use them to improve my cultivation. Huang Shaoli decided to stop the pointless chatter and entered the room. Sometime later, Tianyang sat on the bed with his upper torso exposed, revealing the numerous scars on his body, both new and old. Huang Shaoli, who sat behind him, was shocked by his badly damaged body. There were scars on nearly every inch of his body. Tianyang could tell that Huang Shaoli was startled by his body, and he calmly said, Should I do it myself? And no. I will do it. Huang Shaoli swiftly opened the medicine and scooped some up with her finger, gently applying it to his open wounds. This will burn a little, she warned him. Yet, Tianyang did not even flinch at the pain. You're strong, senior brother. Much stronger than any disciple I have come across. Huang Shaoli mumbled with a slightly rosy face as she continued to caress her slender finger on his body. You're giving me too much credit. I'm weak and talentless. That's not true. Despite having a weaker cultivation, you still face the Leviathan, something most disciples wouldn't even dare to approach. Only those who have a strong Dao heart would be capable of such a feat. What's the point of having a strong Dao heart if you're physically weak? Having a strong Dao heart won't prevent the strong from taking from you. That's... Huang Shaoli didn't know how to respond to his words. Regardless, I think you are strong. I watched your entire fight with the Leviathan, and I kept thinking about how strong you were the whole time. Eventually, she uttered these words, her face flushed with redness. Fortunately for her, Tianyang couldn't see her face at this moment. Thank you. A gentle smile appeared on Tianyang's face, as had never received such compliments before. A few minutes later, Tianyang covered his body and said, I can apply the rest myself. Thank you. Huang Shaoli nodded and handed him the medicine. You'll need to apply the medicine twice a day for the next 7 days, so I will come back later to help you again. Seeing how enthusiastic she was about helping him, Tianyang couldn't muster the strength to refuse her offer and silently nodded. Then I'll see you again in 12 hours. Huang Shaoli left immediately after. After he finished applying the medicine to his lower body, Tianyang returned to his cultivation. Omicronem over the next several days, Huang Shaoli would visit him 2 times every day to apply medicine to his body. As time passed, Huang Shaoli stayed longer than intended, and even began sharing her own stories with him. As for Tianyang, he didn't mind her presence at all, as Huang Shaoli reminded him of Meng Lily during their time in the village. Senior brother, do you know what the other disciples say about you? You can stop calling me senior brother. Just call me by my name. Then you can also call me Shaoli. Alright, Shaoli. Anyways, they call you the suicidal maniac because you're always accepting sect missions that are considered suicidal for your cultivation. I was even told that it was a sect elder who created that nickname. They say it's a miracle that you always manage to come back alive, and that you have a guardian angel by your side who protects you. Suicidal, huh? I guess that's how my actions seem to the others, not that I am denying it. If you don't mind me asking, why are you going to such lengths to acquire strength? It's the only way for someone as talentless as me to keep up with those geniuses who are always a step ahead of me while doing much less. Honestly, I envy them. Of course, that includes you. Tianyang expressed, maintaining a calm demeanor despite uttering such melancholic words. And me? Huang Shaoli was taken aback. Yes. After thinking about it, I recall hearing your name before. Huang Shaoli, a genius who sensed spiritual energy in just a month. You ascended to become an inner disciple within a year of being an outer disciple, becoming the youngest inner disciple at 18 years old. Tianyang acknowledged, recollecting details of Huang Shaoli's remarkable achievements he heard from the other disciples. Huang Shaoli blushed after hearing his compliments. I, on the other hand, needed 3 whole years to sense spiritual energy. Then it took me another 8 years to become an inner disciple. My talents are pathetic in comparison. Literally not worth mentioning. Not everything in this world is about talent. In fact, geniuses tend to die faster than those without talents. Huang Xiaoli said, trying to comfort him. If have managed to live this long despite my suicidal methods, what does this say about me? That I am worse than talentless? That's not. I know. I am only joking. Tianyang chuckled. You're such a... Huang Xiaoli was interrupted by a loud noise that resonated through the ship, immediately followed by a powerful tremor, akin to experiencing an earthquake. This is an emergency announcement. We've encountered a flying Leviathan. Brace yourselves for the worst. The captain's voice carried a tone of dread as if he had already resigned to the bleak outcome. C1349 Escaping the Flying Leviathan. Chapter 1349 Escaping the Flying Leviathan. 1349 Escaping the Flying Leviathan. Did he just say flying Leviathan? Huang Xiaoli had a look of disbelief as she tried to comprehend what she just heard. Tianyang's expression became filled with dread. A flying Leviathan is much stronger than an ordinary Leviathan, and they are usually at the level of divine warriors. I repeat, we have encountered a flying Leviathan. Unfortunately, I am not joking with you all. The flying Leviathan will reach us within 5 minutes. Please use what little time we have left to say goodbye to your loved ones. The captain's voice returned, confirming what everyone wished they had misheard. In the following moment, terrified cries and shouting filled the entire ship as everyone started breaking down from despair. In no way. We've already encountered a Leviathan that only appears once every few decades. Why must the heavens be this cruel? While an ordinary Leviathan appears once every few decades, a flying Leviathan hasn't been seen for over 1,000 years. Despite the odds, Tianyang's ship has managed to encounter both of them on the same journey. Amid such abysmal luck, one might consider it a miracle if the term could be applied in such dire circumstances. And unlike an ordinary Leviathan, there was simply no hope of defeating a flying Leviathan unless there happened to be a divine realm expert on the ship, which was less likely than the appearance of the flying Leviathan, as they had the capability to reach the desolate continent by themselves. The last time a ship encountered a flying Leviathan, the passengers had simply relinquished all hope, agonizingly anticipating their inevitable demise. So this is how I die, huh? Huang Xiaoli uttered in a dazed voice, her gaze fixed blankly on the ground. Xiaoli. Tianyang wanted to comfort her, but unless he could defeat the flying Leviathan, there was simply nothing he could do or say that would help in this situation. Hearing Tianyang's voice, Huang Xiaoli suddenly lifted her head and looked at him with a weird expression on her face. Hey, Tianyang, make love to me, she muttered in a low voice. What the hell are you saying in such a situation? Tianyang was bewildered by her words. It's because we are in this situation that I am saying this, she screamed, tears flowing down her face. We have less than 5 minutes before we die. If we cannot prevent our death, we can, at the very least, ensure that our final moments are filled with pleasure. Huang Xiaoli said. Please, Tianyang. I don't want to die alone. She cried and cried. Given the ship's size, it would take Huang Xiaoli longer than 5 minutes to reach her family. Moreover, with the hallways teeming with people attempting to escape, it was practically impossible for her to navigate through. Consequently, she found herself constrained to spending her final moments with Tianyang, who happened to be with her. Pap! Tianyang suddenly slapped Huang Xiaoli on the face, snapping her awake with pain. Wake up, Xiaoli. Who said we're going to die? I have encountered countless situations where everything seemed hopeless, but I am still here. I will find a way out of this. I promise. Tianyang. Using his sleeves, Tianyang wiped her tears and continued in a soothing voice. Let's meet up with your family first, okay? But the hallways are. Without explaining further, Tianyang wrapped his arm around Huang Xiaoli's waist before pointing his palm at the ceiling and blasting it with his spiritual energy. Due to how weak the wooden walls were, Tianyang effortlessly blew a hole in the ceiling. Let's go. He jumped to the next floor while carrying Huang Xiaoli. Then he repeated his actions. In less than a minute, they'd managed to reach the 7th floor. From there, Tianyang used his superior cultivation to push everyone in the hallway out of his path, until they arrived at the Huang family's room. When they arrived, all of the guards the Huang family hired were nowhere to be seen. Obviously, they had abandoned the Huang family to escape by themselves. However, neither Tianyang nor Huang Xiaoli paid any attention to them at this moment, and only cared about returning to the Huang family. "Father! Mother! It's me!" Huang Xiaoli pounded on the door, silently praying that her family was still in their rooms. The door swung open the next moment, revealing a tearful Huang Chun. "Xiaoli!" Huang Xiaoli's mother rushed to embrace her. Omicron M. Tianyang then said, "We can save the tears for later. We need to get out of here as soon as possible." "How do we even escape?" Huang Chun exclaimed. "Do you have any flying treasures on you?" Tianyang asked. "I do, but I only have one. Moreover, we're still 2 weeks away from the Desolate continent. The flying treasure won't last that long, especially since it has to carry this many people. That doesn't matter. We will fly as far as we can, and we don't need to reach the Desolate continent either. As long as we're away from this ship and the flying Leviathan, it'll be good enough," Tianyang said. Since it was better than sitting still and waiting for their death, Huang Chun agreed to follow Tianyang's plan. Tianyang proceeded to blow another hole in the wall, giving them access to the open sea. Huang Chun then retrieved his flying treasure, summoning a wooden boat that barely had enough room for 4 people. "Quickly get on," Huang Chun urged them. When the other guests saw that they had a flying treasure, they immediately rushed inside the room and begged for the Huang family to take them along. "Please take me with you. I have a family waiting for me back at home," a middle-aged man pleaded. "No. Take me instead. I will give you all of my wealth. No, take me. Take me." The only thing preventing these people from jumping on the flying treasure was Tianyang, who was using his body to keep them at bay. Chapter 1350 Escaping the Flying Leviathan 2. Chapter 1350 Escaping the Flying Leviathan 2. 1350 Escaping the Flying Leviathan 2. Tianyang, come. Huang Xiaoli called for him. "You can go first." "Oh, catch up," he said. Huang Chun immediately activated the flying treasure, shooting into the distance in the blink of an eye. "No. Our blood is on your hands, you bastard." The people cursed at Tianyang after seeing their last hope disappear before their very eyes. Tianyang merely sighed. "This is the outcome for those without power. Blame yourself for lacking it. I will also do the same if I fail to survive." "Screw you. You monster. I hope you die." Ignoring the cursing and crying behind him, Tianyang jumped out of the hole and used his spiritual energy to soar in the sky, chasing after the Huang family. Just as Tianyang disembarked from the ship, he witnessed a colossal figure soaring towards it from the opposite side. The flying Leviathan. The flying Leviathan collided with the ship, baring its teeth and obliterating the massive vessel with a single bite. As if it were a toy smashed by a hammer, the ship shattered into many pieces, and a vast expanse of the ocean became tainted with the blood of those who failed to escape. Tens of thousands of people died in the blink of an eye. If Tianyang had escaped even a few seconds later, he would have most likely died to the flying Leviathan like the others. While the flying Leviathan went after those who tried to escape by swimming away, Tianyang used all of his spiritual energy to speed away, disappearing into the distance. Sometime later, Tianyang reunited with the Huang family, who made room for him in the flying treasure by moving the little boy to his mother's lap. "Tianyang, you're safe." Huang Xiaoli went to embrace him. She saw the ship being destroyed by the flying Leviathan even from miles away, and worried that he didn't make it out in time. "It's still too early to relax. I saw the flying Leviathan chasing after those who tried to escape," Tianyang said. Huang Chun then asked, "What should we do now?" "We can only continue flying towards the Desolate continent, and hope the flying Leviathan doesn't chase after us. But we won't make it to the Desolate continent. This flying treasure will be able to fly for a few days at most before it loses all spiritual energy." "That's fine. We will get as close to the Desolate continent as possible, and once the flying treasure runs out of spiritual energy, we will fly there ourselves. Hopefully, We will make it there before we also run out of spiritual energy, or we find islands that can be used as temporary shelters for us to restore our energy. Tianyang explained his plan that relied entirely on their luck. While neither Huang Xiaoli, her mother, nor her younger brother had the capability to fly, her father, Huang Chen, was a spirit lord. This meant that Huang Chen and Tianyang could share the load and carry those who could not fly. Without either one of them, they wouldn't have been able to carry the others to safety. After a moment of silence, Huang Chen spoke. Even if we don't make it to the desolate continent, I'm just glad that I've managed to acquire a few more days to spend with my family. This is all thanks to you, Tianyang. He proceeded to turn to face Huang Xiaoli and continued, I'm sorry that I have been trying to get you to stop visiting him. Huang Xiaoli uncontrollably blushed after being exposed by her father in such a fashion, as he made it sound like she went against her own father just to visit Tianyang, which wasn't false. Tianyang could only smile and said, I'm going to cultivate. We'll need as much spiritual energy as we can spare. Huang Chen nodded and said, I will continue to control the flying treasure. Tianyang closed his eyes and began to cultivate. The next 2 days were peaceful yet nerve-wracking at the same time. It's been 2 days without any sign of the flying Leviathan. Do you think we're in the clear? Huang Xiaoli asked. I don't want to jinx it, but we should be. Huang Chen nodded. On the 3rd day, they were convinced that the flying Leviathan had not chased after them, allowing them to finally take a deep breath. It appears the heavens have yet to completely abandon us. Huang Chen sighed in relief. How much time do we have left on this flying treasure? Tianyang suddenly opened his eyes and asked. Not long. We have another day at most. Tianyang pondered for a moment before speaking. At our speed, we should be getting pretty close to the desolate continent. If we see any islands on the way there, we might just barely reach our destination by flying. After another 18 hours of flight, Huang Chen warned them, Get ready, this flying treasure is reaching its limit. I would give it a few more minutes before it becomes useless. Normally, one could use their own spiritual energy to supply a flying treasure to keep it running. However, during Tianyang's time, flying treasures operated a little differently, as they all had a set amount of spiritual energy, and once they ran out, they would no longer be useful. While there exist flying treasures that use their operators' spiritual energy, they were exceedingly rare and only reserved for powerful immortals or renowned families. Ordinary flying treasures were also rare and expensive, hence why the Huang family could only afford a single one despite their somewhat wealthy status. I will carry my wife and son. Tianyang, I will leave my daughter to you. Huang Chen said. Tianyang nodded. All right. A few minutes later, right as the flying treasure used its last bit of spiritual energy, Tianyang jumped off while carrying Huang Xiaoli in the princess position. Huang Chen also did the same, carrying his wife who was carrying their son. Not wanting to waste even a little of spiritual energy, they immediately sped towards the direction of the desolate continent. C1351 Days Without Rest. Chapter 1351 Days Without Rest 1351 Days Without Rest. I know I don't need to say this, but I will do so just in case. Make sure you don't fly too close to the water, as there are sea demons that can leap out of the water. Tianyang reminded Huang Chen of the dangers below as they flew. Of course, I am keeping that in mind. Huang Chen then asked, How long will you be able to fly without stopping? I can fly for half a day without stopping, he said. Tianyang was currently a first-level spirit lord, and had only recently attained that level, so his spiritual energy wasn't as vast as Huang Chen, who was a third-level spirit lord. This is also why Huang Chen left his daughter with Tianyang. Let me know when you're running out of spiritual energy. I have some spirit restoration pills with me. Tianyang nodded. I also have some pills on me, but it's not much. While they managed to get close to the desolate continent with the flying treasure, they were no longer traveling at the same speed. In fact, they were flying slower than the ship, and at their current speed, it would take at least another week or two of constant flying to reach their destination. Tianyang used his pills first since they were of inferior quality. Unfortunately, even with spirit restoration pills, there was a good chance that they might not reach their destination. As their trial pressed on, sea demons would sporadically leap from the water, endeavoring to consume them. A few of these creatures used their mouths to expel water with a force so potent that it could rupture their bodies upon impact. Due to the constant danger, neither Tianyang nor Huang Chen could take a moment to rest, remaining alert around the clock. Inevitably, their mental strength degraded over time, making it harder for them to manage their spiritual energy properly, and wasting some of them. 9 hours after his previous pill, Tianyang said, "I need another spirit recovery pill." Huang Chen would approach Tianyang, so his wife would hand Huang Xiaoli a pill, who then fed the pill to Tianyang. "I only have a dozen more pills," Huang Chen said afterward. "Okay. Damn it. If only I hadn't panicked at the ship and left behind the majority of our supplies, we wouldn't be suffering so much right now." Huang Chen cursed himself inwardly for his failure. In the urgency to escape, compounded by the looming threat of the flying Leviathan, the Huang family overlooked the crucial task of bringing most of their supplies with them. However, even if they hadn't forgotten, there wasn't much they could bring with them due to their lack of space, and their spiritual rings were already full of other items that would not help them in their current situation. Tianyang consumed another spirit recovery pill 8 hours later, while Huang Chen only needed to consume one pill every 24 hours. Eventually, they ran out of pills, with the last one being given to Tianyang. "Fuck. We haven't encountered a single island ever since we started flying. Did we get cursed or something to have such bullshit luck?" Tianyang cursed inwardly. When Huang Xiaoli noticed Tianyang started to struggle, she spoke. "Tianyang, I will give you all of my spiritual energy. I know it won't do much besides a moment of relief, but I want to help you in any way possible." Tianyang wasn't stupid enough to refuse, and he was willing to accept anything at this point. "Okay." In the following moment, Huang Xiaoli pressed her lips against Tianyang, transferring her spiritual energy to him through their mouths. While she could have transferred her spiritual energy through other methods, it was the most effective to do so through the mouth. Even though this would be Huang Xiaoli's first kiss, she didn't hesitate for a second. When Huang Chen saw his daughter kissing Tianyang, he pretended to not notice and tried his best to keep a poker face. However, his wife had a different idea. Following her daughter's action, she kissed Huang Chen and transferred her spiritual energy to him. Because of their actions, Tianyang and Huang Chen received another hour of flight time. A few hours later, right as Tianyang was on the verge of running out of spiritual energy, he noticed a small island on the horizon. "It's an island!" he exclaimed in excitement. Omicronim using what little spiritual energy he had left, Tianyang soared towards the island with Huang Chen following behind. Upon landing on the island, Tianyang immediately collapsed on the ground and lost consciousness. "Tianyang." Huang Xiaoli was startled by this. "Don't worry, he's just exhausted," Huang Chen said after checking his condition. He proceeded to sit down and began cultivating to restore his spiritual energy, even creating an array around them to further speed up the recovery process. Tianyang would not wake up for the next 3 days. Meanwhile, after recovering enough spiritual energy, Huang Chen investigated the island. The island was exceptionally small, measuring 7 miles in diameter on one side and 5 miles on the other. There was nothing but trees and grass throughout the entire island. While the island may be empty, Huang Chen was relieved to know that there was no danger on it, allowing him to cultivate with a peaceful mind. Over the next 3 days, Huang Xiaoli and Huang Chen would take turns watching over Tianyang. As for the mother, she had to take care of their boy, who was less than 10 years old. While the others may not require sustenance as cultivators, the young boy was too inexperienced and had not initiated his cultivation yet. Fortunately, his mother had food stored in her spatial ring just for emergencies. 3 days later, Tianyang slowly opened his eyes, feeling as though he'd just woken up after collapsing from overwork. "Tianyang, are you okay? How do you feel?" Huang Xiaoli rushed over when she noticed his awakening. He sat up and looked around with a somewhat dazed face before asking, "How long have I been asleep?" 3 days, she replied. C1352 A Cold Shiver. Chapter 1352 A Cold Shiver 1352 A Cold Shiver 3 days. Tianyang mumbled. Thank you for watching over me, and sorry for the inconvenience, he said a moment later. Please, nothing you do will inconvenience us after everything you've done for us. Huang said. Have you searched the place yet? Tianyang then asked. Yes, it's empty but safe. Good. Then allow me to recover my spiritual energy before we figure out our next plan. Tianyang proceeded to spend the entire day recovering his spiritual energy. What's the plan now? We're both out of pills and we don't have a clue how much further our destination is. Huang asked. We could gamble it, or we can spend some more time on this island to improve our cultivation, which will improve our chances of reaching the desolate continent. Tianyang suggested. Huang looked at his son and sighed. Unfortunately, our son is not a cultivator, and we only have enough food to last him half a month. That's enough time for me to improve my cultivation, even a little. I reached Spirit Lord not long ago, so I probably won't be able to have a breakthrough in such a short amount of time without any treasures. If you need treasures, I have some that might be of use to you. Huang said after pondering for a moment. Are you sure? Tianyang asked. Honestly, our primary objective at the desolate continent is to deliver these treasures, so they actually belong to someone else. However, we're in no position to ponder the consequences. I'll deal with them after I survive, Huang Xiao admitted, acknowledging the current urgency. I'm sure the owners will understand our situation. Tianyang said. Normally, one wouldn't hand out treasures so easily, but they were truly in a dangerous position. Furthermore, Huang would not benefit from these treasures nearly as much as Tianyang would, so he decided to give them to the person who saved their family. After receiving the treasures, Tianyang immediately went into seclusion and began cultivating. Over the next 2 weeks, Huang Xiao and Huang also tried to improve their cultivation as much as possible. A week into their cultivation, Huang Xiao made a breakthrough, entering Spirit Grandmaster. Perhaps it was the severity of their predicament, but Huang Xiao's talents truly began to shine at this moment. Tianyang made his breakthrough on the 12th day, reaching 2nd level Spirit Lord. As for Huang he barely made any improvements. Once prepared, they gathered at the edge of the island. Are you guys ready? There's no going back, and we will either survive or die trying. Tianyang looked at them with a solemn expression. It's a miracle that we made it this far. Hopefully, the heavens will bless us with another island. Huang showed an enthusiastic smile. Huang Xiao and her mother silently nodded their heads. A few minutes later, after mentally preparing themselves, they left the island and began soaring towards the desolate continent. After his breakthrough, Tianyang could fly without stopping for a little under 24 hours. Everything seemed to be going well at first, and even the sea demons weren't attacking as often, a sign that they were getting close to the desolate continent. However, 12 hours into their journey, Tianyang suddenly felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This feeling, after experiencing numerous life or death situations, Tianyang was no stranger to danger. He had even developed something akin to a sixth sense after narrowly escaping death multiple times. Over time, he discerned a subtle yet unmistakable shiver that would course through him, heralding the imminent approach of danger. Careful, something is coming. Tianyang warned them. What is? I don't sense anything. Huang asked for more details. Omicronim, I don't know, but I know that something is definitely coming. Sure enough, after a few more minutes, Tianyang and Huang could sense the approach of something massive, its immense aura looming over them. What is this feeling? Its aura is even stronger than the flying Leviathan. Tianyang broke out in a cold sweat upon sensing the unfathomable aura emanating from this entity. Tianyang, behind you. Huang Xiao suddenly muttered in a terrified voice, her entire body trembling in fear. Tianyang turned, his gaze locking onto the behemoth behind him, and his eyes widened with profound astonishment at the sight of the colossal entity that bore an uncanny resemblance to a giant squid. The giant squid possessed a triangular head, and even though only its eyes were barely peeking out of the water, its head was massive enough to obstruct the sky view. Additionally, numerous long tentacles revealed themselves, each several times larger than the flying Leviathan. What kind of sea demon is that? Tianyang exclaimed, hoping Huang would know. However, Huang was just as shocked and ignorant as him. I don't know. I have never seen or heard of such a monster before. As Tianyang tried to comprehend what was happening, the giant squid sea demon suddenly acted, slamming one of its massive tentacles in their direction. It's attacking. Move out of the way. Huang roared. Both Tianyang and Huang worked their dantian to its limit in order to dodge the tentacle, not caring about how much spiritual energy it wasted. Their speed skyrocketed, surpassing even the flying treasure's speed. In just a few seconds, Tianyang and Huang burned enough spiritual energy that would have lasted them an hour, and they still barely managed to dodge the attack. Unfortunately, things only got worse for them when the giant sea demon launched another tentacle at them. It's coming again. They immediately used another hour's worth of spiritual energy without hesitation. Is this it? Am I going to die here? Tianyang could not see any light at the end of their dark tunnel. They were neither fast enough to outpace the sea demon, nor possessed enough spiritual energy to continuously evade its attacks. At this rate, their demise seemed inevitable, a matter of mere moments away. C1353 Massive Sea Demon of Unknown Origin. Chapter 1353 Massive Sea Demon of Unknown Origin. 1353 Massive Sea Demon of Unknown Origin. I'm sorry, Xiao. I don't think we'll be able to avoid death this time. Tianyang muttered in a defeated voice as he dodged the next strike. It's okay. I had prepared for my death even before we left the ship. Huang sighed. Instead of panicking, they merely accepted their fate with a calm demeanor. I'm glad that I got to meet you at the very end, Tianyang, she continued. Me too. It was fun while it lasted. At the same time, Huang also accepted his fate and said his goodbyes to his wife and son. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for bringing you guys with me despite knowing that it would be a dangerous journey. I'm sorry for being so weak. Tears streamed down Huang face. Don't be, dear. At the very least, I'm glad that we're able to be together in our final moments. Where's our daughter? Huang looked around and sighed. Looks like we were too busy dodging the attacks and got separated. They embraced each other while their son bawled his eyes out. After evading the 9th strike from the sea demon, both Tianyang and Huang reached their limit and exhausted their spiritual energy. That's it. I don't have enough spiritual energy to dodge the next one. Tianyang sighed. Suddenly, their views darkened, almost as though it turned to night. Tianyang turned around to see what had caused the blackout. The sea demon, enraged that its attacks had missed its target multiple times, opted to lift all of its tentacles into the air, preparing for an ultimate assault. Tianyang could only let out a dumbfounded mutter. Even if his cultivation was at its peak, he wouldn't have been able to avoid such an attack. In the next moment, the sea demon slammed all 10 of its tentacles down. Despite knowing that he would be dead in the following second, Tianyang refused to close his eyes, staring at the horizon. Huh? He muttered in a dazed voice, and his eyes widened at the distant silhouette of land that had suddenly materialized on the horizon. What kind of joke is the heavens playing on us? Tianyang sighed inwardly as he closed his eyes, silently awaiting his death. However, Tianyang remained conscious even several moments later, when he should have died several moments ago. Dong. Huang suddenly cried out loud in pain. Tianyang also felt his entire body slamming into something solid. He quickly opened his eyes to see that they had actually crashed into a tree, and they were currently lying on the ground for some inexplicable reason. What happened? Where are we? How are we still alive? Tianyang was filled with questions. Tianyang? Am I dreaming? Or is this heaven? Huang looked at him, appearing just as baffled as him. I don't know, but I think we're still alive. Right as Huang opened her mouth to speak, a powerful tremble shook the entire world, followed by a loud slamming noise. After Tianyang and Huang fell on the floor from the tremor, they subconsciously turned to look behind them. In the distance, on the very edge of the horizon, a monumental pillar of water erupted toward the heavens, piercing the clouds, evoking the impression that a deity-like force had collided with the vast expanse of the sea. If Tianyang didn't know any better, he would have thought that something massive had fallen into the sea, perhaps a meteor of sorts. The pillar of water eventually subsided, and that's when Tianyang discerned a familiar silhouette swiftly disappearing from where the water had surged. No way, that can't be. Huang Xiaoli covered her mouth in shock after realizing what they'd just witnessed. Tianyang grasped his chest and muttered, "That was the sea demon, where we were just at, where we should have died. However, for some inexplicable reason, we were teleported here and survived the attack." What about my father and mother? My younger brother? Does that mean they've also survived the attack? Huang Xiaoli immediately thought of her family. I'm not sure, but if we survived, there is a good chance that they managed to survive as well. Tianyang could only come to this conclusion. After all, it would make less sense if they were the only ones who experienced the phenomenon. Huang Xiaoli held on to such hope. Once they recollected themselves, Huang Xiaoli asked, "Where are we? Another island?" Tianyang shook his head and said in a solemn voice, "No. I think we've arrived at the Desolate continent. I saw it right before we were teleported, and judging by our position, it's exactly the place I saw. Let me recover some of my cultivation before we look for your parents," Tianyang then said. "Okay. I'll watch over you." After finding an isolated place to cultivate, Tianyang immediately began his cultivation. Meanwhile, back at the Immortal Monastery, a beautiful woman sensed something and retrieved a dull-colored object that appeared to be shattered. "Is something the matter, Elder Sun?" the individual before her inquired upon seeing the frown on her face. Elder Sun sighed. "I knew that reckless brat was up to something when he suddenly took 3 months of leave and disappeared from the sect without a word. Fortunately, I had secretly given him a life-saving treasure, or he would have died just now." "This reckless brat? Are you referring to the suicidal maniac? To give him a life-saving treasure without telling him? You must really care about him." The person before her chuckled jokingly. Elder Sun became a little flustered and quickly said, "What do you know? He still owes me a debt, so simply I cannot let him die before he repays that debt." "Whatever you say." The individual laughed out loud. And he continued, "Anyways, are you going to save him now? He might still be in danger for all we know." After a moment of silence, Elder Sun spoke. "He's like a cockroach, resistant and almost undying. Although I've saved his life many times, I've never had to save him twice in a row. I'll manage like always." Naturally, Tianyang was not aware of their conversation, only learning about it much later. C1354 Colossal. Chapter 1354 Colossal. 1354 Colossal. After spending nearly an entire day recovering around 90% of his cultivation, Tianyang stopped his cultivation and began the search for Huang Xiaoli's parents. "Where should we start looking?" Huang Xiaoli as they navigated through the vast and empty wilderness. "I know you're in a hurry, but we won't find them by wandering aimlessly. Let's try to find a nearby city and prepare ourselves first," he said. "Okay. How much do you know about the Desolate continent?" Tianyang suddenly asked. "Not much, honestly. I know that this place is a treasure trove with many rare medicines and powerful treasures. There are also formidable magical beasts that roam this land." Tianyang then said, "There are countless mysteries as well as opportunities hidden throughout this land. However, the Desolate continent is also a lawless land that has only just begun to develop, so there are only 5 cities available. We have the Southern Stronghold, which is also used as a marketplace, the Northern Stronghold, the Western Stronghold, and lastly the Central Stronghold, which is also the largest city." "You did your research, huh?" Huang Xiaoli seemed impressed by his knowledge. Who would be stupid enough to visit a foreign land without any prior knowledge? Tianyang raised his eyebrows, his gaze directed at her. "I'm sorry." Huang Xiaoli lowered her head and subconsciously apologized after seeing his gaze. Her face flushed with redness. "I'm not calling you stupid, but you should be more diligent," Tianyang sighed. "I understand." She nodded. Anyways, the Desolate continent is also separated into 5 levels of difficulties. Starting from the weakest, we have the Southern Stronghold, the Western Stronghold, the Northern Stronghold, the Eastern Stronghold, and the Central Stronghold. He continued. The magical beasts around the Southern Stronghold are the weakest, being between the level of a Spirit Lord to a Spirit King. At the Western Stronghold, they become increasingly dangerous, being between Spirit Emperor and Spirit Sovereign. The Northern Stronghold isn't much different from the Western Stronghold, except that magical beasts at the level of Spirit Sovereigns will appear more often than Spirit Emperors. The magical beasts that appear within the Eastern Stronghold won't be past Divine Warrior. As for the Central Stronghold, magical beasts between the level of Spirit Lord and Divine Grandmaster could appear. That's quite the range, Huang Xiao muttered. Even if you don't remember this information, there is one thing you must remember. In the Desolate continent, there roams an entity that even divine kings don't dare to offend. In terms of strength, it might even be on par with that giant sea demon we encountered. Huang Xiao swallowed nervously as she asked, "What is this monster?" The people here call it Colossal because of its towering figure that topples even mountains, just like that sea demon. The only difference is its figure, which resembles a human's figure. You'll know its identity right away when you see it. Huang Xiao suddenly stopped walking, her eyes wide open as she gazed towards the sky. As something like that? She pointed behind him while trembling. Tianyang turned around, and sure enough, there was a massive human-like figure casually moving near the horizon. This entity had a pitch-black body that looked like it had emerged from the shadow, with 2 round red eyes. It had 2 arms and 2 legs, just like a human. The only human feature it was missing was a mouth. However, the most interesting feature of this entity was its lack of presence. Despite its massive and terrifying appearance, the Colossal did not have the slightest presence, almost as if it didn't truly exist, or they were looking at it from another dimension where its presence could not reach. Even though I am staring right at it, my mind tells me that it doesn't exist, that I am merely hallucinating. Tianyang muttered in a dazed voice. Unlike Huang Xiao, whose eyes were filled with fear, his were filled with awe and curiosity. Suddenly, almost as though the Colossal detected their gaze, it stopped moving and turned to look in their direction. Hi. Huang Xiao immediately fell on her buttocks, as the Colossal's gaze was simply too terrifying for her. Tianyang didn't even flinch, even staring directly into its eyes. It felt as if the entire world had fallen silent at this moment, that only he and the Colossal existed. Eventually, the Colossal returned to facing the front and continued walking, acting as though nothing happened. Are you okay? Tianyang looked at Huang Xiao, who was still frozen on the floor with her eyes soaked in tears. Tianyang chuckled and offered his hand to help her up. However, Huang Xiao refused to move. What's wrong? The Colossal is long gone, and it isn't known for being aggressive, so it won't attack us unless we offend it first, he explained to her. Huang Xiao muttered after a moment of silence. I accidentally wet myself. Huh? Tianyang immediately wore a dumbfounded look on his face. One of the most humiliating ordeals for a cultivator is the loss of control over their own body, particularly in the more sensitive areas, such as wetting or shitting themselves. Even when facing the massive sea demon, Huang Xiao managed to control her bladder. Yet the Colossal proved to be too much for her to handle. Unsure of how to respond to such a specific situation, Tianyang subconsciously uttered, "How can I help? Do you have extra clothes for me to borrow?" she asked, her face flushed in redness. "I have a few pairs of my disciple uniform, but they might be a little loose on you," he said. "It's better than walking around in my current state," she exclaimed. Tianyang quickly retrieved a pair of his uniform and handed it to her. "It'll go over there, where I can't see you." Tianyang pointed to the trees not far away. C1355 Nothing but a Hindrance. Chapter 1355 Nothing but a Hindrance. 1355 Nothing but a Hindrance. Just as Tianyang started walking away, Huang Xiao shouted in a scared voice, "Stop! Don't leave me! I don't want to be alone." "You're not going to be alone. I will still be nearby," he said. "No. I want you to be by my side, somewhere I can see you. Tianyang found this a bit bothersome, but he didn't blame her. She's most likely traumatized by our journey here. Not that I can blame her. Huang Shaoli was not even 20 years old. And yet, she had already faced harrowing experiences that most individuals wouldn't even dream of encountering. No matter how much of a genius she was, it was only natural for her to be traumatized. All right, I'll stay in your view. Tianyang proceeded to face away from her, and even closed his eyes. Of course, he could still peek using his divine sense, but he wasn't a degenerate who would do such shameful acts. Huang Shaoli immediately removed her dirty clothes and changed into Tianyang's uniform. Okay, I am done. You can look now, she said a moment later. Tianyang turned around to see her new appearance. Unsurprisingly, she still looked charming even when wearing his clothes. In fact, it made her look even more unique. Tianyang avoided commenting on her new look, fearing that it might offend her. Let's keep moving. I'd like to reach a city before it gets dark if possible. The two of them picked up their pace and began speeding through the land while Tianyang continuously scanned their vicinity for any presence. Several minutes later, they encountered a magical beast that resembled a turtle. Third-level Spirit King. We're either near the southern stronghold or the central stronghold. Surely it's the southern stronghold. We've used multiple lifetimes of bad luck just to get here. Surely, there can't be any left, right? Huang Shaoli muttered to herself. The sky began darkening several hours later, yet they had not arrived at the city. It'll be too dangerous to keep moving at night, especially when magical beasts are most active during this time. Let's find a place to camp the night. Okay. After looking around, they found a small cave that was somewhat isolated. However, there was only enough room for a single person to lie down. You can sleep. Oh, keep watch, Tianyang said to her. Are you sure? I think we can both get some sleep if we squeeze together. It'll be fine if you're worried. Somebody has to keep watch just in case we're attacked. I also had plenty of sleep on the island. He shook his head. If you say so. After a brief pause, she continued. Don't go too far, okay? Tianyang smiled. I won't go anywhere. Thank you. Huang Shaoli laid down and closed her eyes, but not before holding on to Tianyang's robes as insurance. Within seconds, she fell into a deep sleep. Tianyang stared at her sleeping face and sighed inwardly. Our journey here may have been rough, but things probably won't get any easier from this point. Once he had his full with Huang Shaoli's sleeping face, Tianyang spent the rest of the night focused on their surroundings. Sometime later, Huang Shaoli slowly woke up from her sleep. When she attempted to stretch, she found herself unable to do so, and the reality of her current situation quickly rushed back to her. Tianyang, are you there? She started shouting for him even before she fully opened her eyes. Calm down, I am here. Tianyang quickly responded. Huang Shaoli heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing his face. He then gestured toward her hand, which still tightly clung to his robes. With such a strong grip on me, I wouldn't be able to go anywhere even if wanted to, he joked. Huang Shaoli immediately released his robe and became flustered. I didn't know. Anyways, I hope you had a good sleep. She nodded. Yes, I feel very refreshed, almost as if I slept for ages. I mean, you did sleep for 4 days straight, he casually said, revealing this shocking information to her. I did what? Huang Shaoli exclaimed in a shocked voice. Are you serious? Or are you joking? Why didn't you wake me up? I tried, honestly, but you just wouldn't wake up no matter how much I tried to wake you up, so I gave up. That can't be. Huang Shaoli was in disbelief. Forget it. You can think about it as we move. They immediately resumed their journey. I hope they are okay. Huang Shaoli prayed inwardly for her family's safety. Over the next several days, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli wandered the desolate continent in search of a city, but they only encountered magical beasts. They avoided almost every magical beast they encountered, but some of their encounters were unavoidable, forcing them to confront the magical beast. Luckily for them, these magical beasts were manageable for Tianyang to take down alone. I'm sorry. Huang Shaoli suddenly muttered after their latest fight. What for? You don't need to pretend. I know that I am useless. that I am nothing but a hindrance for you. I don't even have a way to repay you for everything you've done for me. I won't blame you if you want to leave me behind." Hearing her words, Tianyong gave her a slap on the back of the head, startling her. What are you doing?" She stared at him with a dazed face. "Are you really saying that now? I would have long abandoned you if I were that type of person, and I am not doing this with the expectation of some reward. If you keep thinking about such dumb things, they'll really leave you behind." "I won't. I will stop thinking about it. I swear." She swore. "Then let's keep moving." "Okay." Huang Shaoli quickly followed behind him, adorned with a radiant smile, her heart fluttering with a newfound feeling that she was experiencing for the first time. C1356 Southern Stronghold. Chapter 1356 Southern Stronghold. 1356 Southern Stronghold. After traveling for several more days, Tianyong and Huang Shaoli finally encountered something that wasn't a magical beast. "Excuse me, do you know where the nearest city is located?" Tianyong approached a cultivator who had just finished defeating a magical beast. However, this cultivator immediately became wary of him and went into a combative stance. Tianyong quickly raised his hand when he saw this, and he tried to assure the cultivator that they meant no harm. "Please wait. We are not here to harm you. We're simply lost." Unsurprisingly, the cultivator did not even twitch at his words and remained wary. They were currently on the Desolate continent, where laws do not apply and only one rule applies: the law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak. In this world, it was a common occurrence for cultivators to engage in acts of murder and theft. Those lacking the strength to protect themselves would inevitably fall victim to exploitation. Tianyong was well aware of this rule, but they were not in a position to ignore another human after spending an entire week wandering and lost in this dangerous land. "Huh. Do I really look that stupid to you? You say you're lost? That's funny, considering that the nearest city is only a mile from here." The cultivator sneered in disdain. "Really? Is that true?" Tianyong was pleasantly surprised to learn this information. "I must admit, you are pretty good at acting. If I was even a little dumber, I would have believed you," the cultivator said. Tianyong was speechless, but he didn't bother attempting to convince the cultivator otherwise, having already obtained the information he needed. He turned around and returned to Huang Shaoli. "The city is only a mile away." "That's great. I can finally clean myself." She shed blissful tears imagining herself in a bathtub. Tianyong proceeded to carry her into the air before flying towards the city, leaving the cultivator dumbfounded. Were they truly lost? He mumbled to himself. They had tried searching from the air a few days ago, but they didn't see anything, even attracting the attention of several flying magical beasts, an experience that nearly cost them their lives, so they avoided entering the air from that point forth. Now that he was aware of a nearby city, Tianyong didn't have to worry about any flying magical beasts, as magical beasts tend to avoid the cities. Sometime later, Tianyong arrived at the city, which happened to be the southern stronghold, a conclusion he had come to days before after only encountering magical beasts between the level of Spirit Lord and Spirit King. "The city isn't as safe as one might think, so stay close to me even when we are inside," Tianyong warned. "Okay." Huang Shaoli immediately grabbed onto his robe like a child who didn't want to separate from their parent in a crowded street, an action that had become a habit of hers. Tianyong entered the city shortly. Since it was a city owned by nobody, there was no need to pay entrance fees like one normally would. "Let's find a place to clean ourselves before we look for any information about your family," Tianyong suggested. "Let's," she immediately agreed. The interior of the city was rough and barely developed, resembling that of a rural city. The buildings looked as if they were built without any plans or approval, so there were gaps of all sizes between each building. The street was impressively vast, adorned with numerous merchants showcasing their wares on blankets as they sat behind them, eager to make sales. Most of these merchants also had surprisingly high cultivation, which explained their boldness to display their treasures in a place where one could steal in broad daylight. After looking around for an entire hour, they only managed to find a single crude-looking hotel. Not wanting to walk around with dirt and mud sticking to their body for even a second longer than they had to, they settled for the hotel, which also had a tremendous price tag that even luxurious hotels couldn't compare. Small rooms are 50 spirit stones and the bigger rooms will cost 100 spirit stones with a time limit of 3 days. Do your rooms have a bathtub? Huang Xiaoli asked. We have 2 rooms with bathtubs, but one of them is already occupied. The cost will be 200 spirit stones for 3 days. I don't have that kind of money, Tianyang said to Huang Xiaoli. Huang Xiaoli suddenly realized that this was her chance to be helpful and immediately took out 200 spirit stones, placing them before the manager. Well, take that room. Thank you for your business. Here is your key. We will notify you the day before your time is up. Let's go. Huang Xiaoli grabbed Tianyang's hand and dragged him to their room. When they entered the room, they were shocked by how small it turned out to be. This is their most luxurious room. This isn't even worth a silver a night, much less 100 spirit stones. Huang Xiaoli felt scammed. Upon opening the door to their room, they were greeted by a room that was twice as spacious as Tianyang's room in the Raging Serpent, but that doesn't say much when considering the size of his room. Moreover, there was only a single large bed in the room. Besides that, the bathroom was in a separate room, which was even smaller than Tianyang's room in the Raging Serpent, and only had enough room to fit a medium-sized bathtub. Compared to what she was normally used to, the hotel's room couldn't even compare to a pig pen. However, since they were mostly there for the bathtub, they didn't complain too much. Huang Xiaoli entered the bathroom first, and she wouldn't come back out for 3 whole hours. Even scrubbing her entire body over 10 times wouldn't require that amount of time, so Tianyang couldn't imagine what she was doing inside. Naturally, he didn't actually spend any time doing such pointless acts. Instead, he focused on improving his cultivation. C1357 Searching for the Huang Family. Chapter 1357 Searching for the Huang Family. 1357 Searching for the Huang Family. After spending 3 hours in the bathroom, Huang Xiaoli came out looking like she'd experienced rebirth. Her brown skin had returned to its smooth jade-like complexion. Her sticky and messy hair became as straight as a sword with each strand shimmering like an ocean bathed in sunlight. The worst part, her foul smell that was caused by her accident was completely gone, replaced by a sweet fragrance. Thank you for the fresh clothes. I washed the old one for you. Huang Xiaoli handed him the first pair of uniforms he gave her in the very beginning. Also, hurry up and wash yourself. You smell like a beggar, she said while pinching her nose. Because she also smelled like a beggar before her shower, she didn't notice the foul smell. However, now that she was completely cleaned up, Tianyang's odor became very distinct and intense to her. As you wish, princess, Tianyang jokingly said as he entered the bathroom. He came back out half an hour later to see Huang Xiaoli lying on the bed, seemingly deep asleep. Not wanting to disturb her, he sat on the cold floor and returned to his cultivation. Huang Xiaoli would not wake up for another 2 days. Ah, I fell asleep by accident, she exclaimed when she woke up. Don't worry, it was only 2 days this time, he smiled. 2 days. I didn't try to wake you up this time if you're wondering. Huang Xiaoli felt really guilty for wasting so much time when it could have been spent looking for her parents, but she couldn't help herself, as she was exhausted from all that traveling. Are you ready to look for your parents? Tianyang asked. Of course, she said as she jumped off the bed. Wait, before we leave, I think you should disguise yourself a little. Huh? What's wrong with my appearance? She raised an eyebrow. You will attract too much attention if you go out in that appearance, he explained. Huang Xiaoli blushed after hearing his words. Does this mean he actually finds me attractive? He's not blind after all. She felt relieved to know that Tianyang was not someone who couldn't see beauty. Had been acting so normal around her that she'd begun to doubt her own beauty. Give me a minute. Huang Xiaoli retrieved a box of makeup and proceeded to apply it to her face. In mere minutes, Huang Xiaoli changed her appearance from that of a peerless beauty to an extraordinarily handsome young man. This shocking transformation that was done with pills greatly surprised Tianyang, who didn't know the capabilities of a woman's makeup until this moment. To make her disguise even more convincing, Huang Shaoli tied her hair into a ponytail just like Tianyang. What do you think? She asked him afterward, her tone carrying a hint of pride. Makes me wonder if I've been looking at your real face or not this entire. Huang Shaoli suddenly swung her leg at him, interrupting him. I'm just joking. Tianyang released her leg shortly after catching it. You look like an actual man, I'm quite impressed. I wanted to look a little less beautiful, but it's hard to do so without making my face look unnatural, she said, unknowingly sounding narcissistic. Tianyang did not respond to such words. Sometime later, they left the room and went downstairs. Oh, perfect. I was going to let you know that you only have 1 day left. The manager said to them. If you want to continue using the room, you have to pay for another 3 days right now. If not, you won't be able to keep the room if someone else were to rent it even if you are still living in it. You can check us out now since we won't be coming back, Tianyang said. If you say so. Tianyang returned the room key before leaving the building. How should we go about finding my family? Huang Shaoli asked. We can start by asking around. We should start with the merchants since they have been here the longest and would have seen the most people, he suggested. Sounds good. They approached the merchants and began their search. Hello, I am looking for some people. Have you seen a family of 3 around recently? They should have a young boy around 10 years old with them. Huang Shaoli asked. However, the merchant remained silent, only throwing up a money sign using his hand. Huang Shaoli didn't hesitate and handed him 5 spirit stones. I haven't seen them, the merchant said. Huang Shaoli felt like she got scammed again, but there was nothing she could do. She repeated the same thing with the other merchants. Have you seen a family of 3 with a young boy recently? Have you seen a middle-aged man at the 3rd level spirit lord recently? You have. Really? Was he with a woman and a young boy? At the end of the day, Huang Shaoli had spent almost 300 spirit stones without obtaining any information about her family. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but this is. Huang Shaoli had a dejected look on her face. Then she became angry. Half of them were scammers and the other half were liars. I can't believe the people in this place. Is there not a single decent person in this place? You aren't used to the real world, are you? Tianyang could tell that she had lived a sheltered life and was still naive about how the world operated. Is it really that obvious? She sighed. Yes. He nodded without hesitation. I have spent most of my life at home with most of my knowledge taught by my parents. I've only started seeing the outside world when I joined the Immortal Monastery as a disciple. She admitted to having a lack of experience. You may be naive now, but you have plenty of time to learn and grow. Tianyang tried to comfort her. Thank you, she responded with a forced smile. C1358 Teleportation Array. Chapter 1358 Teleportation Array 1358 Teleportation Array. If you have the time to complain, let's use it to continue our search, Tianyang said to her. Okay. After spending a few more days asking thousands of people around the southern stronghold, they were still unable to find Huang Shaoli's parents. Hey Tianyang, you came here to train, right? Are you sure you want to spend so much time here? I think I can do this by myself, Huang Shaoli suddenly said to him. I've had enough life or death situations for now. I want to take it easy for a bit, he calmly said. Moreover, I am still trying to solidify my previous breakthrough. Until I am fully used to my new strength, I'll help you. Thank you, Huang Shaoli mumbled. With that being said, we've spent an entire week in this place without learning anything about your family. I think it's safe to assume that they never made it here, he continued a moment later. What else can we do? It's not like we can go to the other cities. We'll most likely die before we even make it there. Huang Shaoli released a hopeless sigh. Tianyang maintained a moment of silence before speaking. Actually, there is a way to visit the other cities without encountering any magical beasts, but it'll be very expensive, hence why I hadn't brought it up until now. What method? The array masters have made a breakthrough in their techniques not long ago. They call it the teleportation array, which will allow anyone to teleport from array to array as long as these arrays are set up. However, it costs a tremendous amount of spiritual energy for each use, so they have to keep feeding the array spirit stones or treasures to keep it functioning. I've heard my father mention this teleportation array to his fellow array masters before, Huang Xiaoli said. Your father was an array master? Tianyang didn't know this and was quite surprised to learn it, as array masters are rare existences in the divine heavens. Yes, he's only a level 2 array master though. That's still plenty impressive. Anyways, these teleportation arrays are available on the Desolate continent, correct? How much would it cost to use these arrays? Huang Xiaoli proceeded to ask. I'm not sure since they price it based on the distance. It could be anywhere from several hundred spirit stones to several thousand, if not even more. If it's just several thousand, it won't be a problem, she declared in a confident tone. Tianyang was speechless, and he asked what had been on his mind for some time now. Just how rich are you? I only have about 300,000 spirit stones left, she responded nonchalantly. Only 300,000. That's a lot. Why are you even carrying around so much money? Tianyang exclaimed in a shocked voice. I don't usually carry so much with me, but since we were going to the Desolate continent, known for rare treasures, I planned on buying a thing or two, she said. Just so you know, I always have less than 10 spirit stones in my possession. And it's not because I keep the rest somewhere else. I am simply broke, Tianyang said in a somewhat prideful manner, leaving Huang Xiaoli speechless. How is it even possible to have so little when you are a spirit lord? You also do a lot of risky sect missions. That alone should have given you a decent amount of money. I use them immediately to boost my cultivation. That way, if someone tries to rob me, I won't have much to give them and therefore won't feel bad about it. That is such a weird way of thinking. You won't think like that once you get robbed. Tianyang shrugged. So you've been robbed before? Plenty of times. Is that really something to be proud of? Of course. Most robberies end up as murder, so it's impressive to remain alive after being robbed many times. Anyways, let's head to the teleportation array, said Tianyang. Okay, but where will we go? Let's head to the Western Stronghold first, then we can go to the Northern Stronghold and Eastern Stronghold. We'll save the Central Stronghold for last. Tianyang didn't want to say it out loud, but the chances of the Huang family surviving the other cities were near zero. If her family had been teleported to anywhere that isn't near the Southern Stronghold, they would most likely perish to magical beasts before reaching the city. He sighed inwardly. He harbored the assumption that Huang Xiaoli's family might no longer be in this world. A weighty realization that he chose to keep to himself. Nonetheless, he remained committed to assisting her in the search. They arrived at the teleportation array sometime later. It will cost 5,000 spirit stones for one of you to reach the Western Stronghold, said the array master managing the teleportation array. F5,000. Tianyang broke into a cold sweat after hearing such a large figure. He could cultivate for decades with 5,000 spirit stones. I understand. Hey, raise 10,000. Huang Xiaoli handed over the money without hesitation. Her actions caught the attention of several people there. In these people's eyes, Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli were young and fat sheep that could easily be exploited. Yuan felt their gazes but decided to remain silent. After entering the teleportation array, they were instantly teleported to the Western Stronghold. Let's go. Tianyang suddenly grabbed Huang Xiaoli's hand the moment they exited the teleportation array and started running away, dragging her along. Ha! What happened? Startled by his actions, Huang Xiaoli asked in a puzzled tone. Because you carelessly took out so much money, we've attracted some bad people, he briefly explained. What? That's ridiculous. Sure enough, shortly after they left the teleportation formation, another group of people that also came from the Southern Stronghold appeared in the Western Stronghold. I found them. They are running away over there. One of these individuals pointed at Tianyang while alerting the rest of the group. After them, the group consisted of 4 individuals, and to follow Tianyang using the teleportation array, they had to expend 20,000 spirit stones. Naturally, they assumed that Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli possessed sufficient resources to not only cover their own expenses, but also yield additional gains, prompting their decision to pursue the duo. C1359 Targeted. Chapter 1359 Targeted. 1359 Targeted. The pursuers are between the first-level Spirit Lord and the third-level Spirit Lord. We won't be able to win in a direct confrontation, Tianyang thought to himself after sensing their cultivation. Fortunately for him, pursuing someone in the city proved challenging due to the irregular placement of buildings. Additionally, Tianyang, accustomed to being pursued, had acquired the skill of misdirection to evade those chasing him. Sometime later, Tianyang managed to shake off his pursuers by hiding in an isolated alley. We should be safe now. I'm sorry. I was too careless. Huang Xiao sighed. No, as the one in charge, I am also responsible. Anyways, those guys all had the same tattoo on their body. Due to the desolate continent's lawless nature, fugitives and bandits started forming gangs to protect each other and bully the others. If I recall correctly, those guys belong to a gang called the Gold and Money Bandits. They are known for ganging up on the weak. Although their members do not have high cultivation, they are the largest gang in the desolate continent. What should we do now? She asked. Unfortunately, we won't be able to search for your parents in the open now, as they will actively look for us. Huang Xiao bit her lower lip in frustration after hearing this. 17:08 However, Tianyang continued, but if we disguise ourselves with an appearance-reforming pill and change our clothes, we should be fine. Where would we get such a pill? I don't have any on me. Tianyang proceeded to retrieve 2 appearance-reforming pill and handed one to her. I have some. You're really full of surprises, she muttered. Wait, why didn't you give me this before? I could have used this instead. Do you have any idea how expensive these pills are? They are nearly 50 spirit stones each. If you can disguise yourself without needing it, I'd only be wasting money, he said. Huang Xiao was speechless. Also, these pills only work for about 12 hours, and I only have enough for the next 3 days. If we can't buy more by then, we'll have to stop looking for your parents, Tianyang warned. We just need to buy more, right? I'll buy as much as we need, she declared in a determined voice. That is if we can find more. With that being said, there should be an abundance of these pills in this sort of place due to its nature. They swallowed the pill a moment later, changing their appearance entirely. What about our clothes? Huang Xiao asked. I have plain clothes, but I only have one set. You can have it. Tianyang handed her a set of plain white robes. What about you? I'll settle with this for now. He retrieved a black cloak, enveloping his entire body in its folds. Once they were prepared, they left the alley and resumed their search for the Huang family. After a day of normality, Tianyang suddenly noticed people staring at them from a distance. We need to leave right now, Tianyang said to Huang Xiao through divine sense. He grabbed her hand and immediately began running away. Sometime later, once they were in the clear, he explained, "They've found us." What? How? Tianyang pondered for a moment before responding. They probably investigated about us. Since we've been asking about your family for several days at the southern stronghold, they can easily spot us if we continue doing the same thing, regardless of our disguise. Omicron, so we can no longer look for my family without being hunted? She muttered in a low voice. Tianyang didn't know how to respond and remained silent. Even if they traveled to another city, the Gold and Money Bandits had eyes in all 5 cities, so unless they got rid of the gang, their search was essentially over. Why is nothing going right? I am just trying to find my family. Why is the heavens doing this to us? What did we do wrong? Huang Xiao suddenly released her frustration, tears streaming down her face. Sometime later, Tianyang said, although we can't ask around about your family, we can still look around ourselves. In response to his words, Huang Xiao sighed with a heaviness that echoed through her words. There's no point. It's evident that the heavens are playing with us. Despite my attempts to cling to hope, deep within, I knew that my family never made it out alive, that I was only denying reality to delay the inevitable. Then how do you explain our escape? Why were we the only ones who survived when we were all being targeted by that sea demon? Tianyang asked. I don't know, and I don't care anymore. I'm tired. I want all of this to end already. Huang Xiaoli lowered her head, her eyes devoid of any light, almost as if her soul had died. Tianyang knew that there was nothing he could say that would make her feel better. So he silently sat beside her and patiently waited for her to recover. If I leave now, I will probably live the rest of my life thinking about it. That would be disastrous for my Dao heart. He sighed inwardly. Thus, for the next hour, they would sit in a narrow and isolated alley without uttering a single word to each other. Eventually, Huang Xiaoli broke the silence and asked, Why are you doing so much for me? I don't deserve it. Tianyang could tell that Huang Xiaoli was deliberately saying such things even though she promised not to bring it up again, so that he could leave her behind. Just leave me behind. Huang Xiaoli sighed inwardly. She lacked the courage to directly ask him to leave, so this was the only way for her to express herself. However, in response, Tianyang suddenly wrapped his arm around her and mumbled in a low voice, I promised your father that I'd protect you, and I am not one to break promises. Huang Xiaoli lifted her head and looked at him after hearing his words. My father? She muttered in a dazed voice. C1360 Huang Xiaoli's Feelings. Chapter 1360 Huang Xiaoli's Feelings. 1360 Huang Xiaoli's Feelings. When did you promise my father such a thing? Huang Xiaoli asked him. After a brief moment of silence he revealed. When we were being attacked by the sea demon, he communicated with me through divine sense. If you manage to get out of this alive and we don't, please protect my daughter. These were his exact words right before we got separated. Huang Xiaoli began bawling her eyes out after hearing this. Father. Mother. Brother. She screamed into her sleeves, releasing all of her built-up anguish. Huang Xiaoli cried and cried, soaking her whole sleeve with tears. Eventually, after many minutes of release, Huang Xiaoli calmed down. Thank you, Tianyang. I will stop being so weak. That will be the last time I shed tears, she declared with a determined look on her face. Tianyang smiled. It's okay to have a moment of weakness now and then. That's what makes us human. What do you want to do next? He then asked. I'm going to stop searching for my family and start focusing on improving my cultivation. I want to be strong enough to wipe away the gold and money bandits by myself, she said. She then looked at him and asked, Do you mind if I follow you to train? I know my cultivation is lacking right now, but I will try my best to not get in your way and catch up. He smiled and said, How am I going to protect you if you're not by my side? Huang Xiaoli found his smile to be exceptionally handsome for some reason, and she immediately began blushing. Let's get some rest before we begin our training, he suggested. Okay. They proceeded to change their disguise with an appearance reforming pill before looking for a hotel to stay at. Once they found a hotel, Huang Xiaoli asked for the largest room that had a bathtub. It will cost 50 spirit stones per night. Checkout will be at noon, the manager said. Huang Xiaoli paid for 7 days in advance. An entire week? That might be a little too much, Tianyang said as they entered their room, which was decently better than their stay at the previous hotel. I want to make sure that we're fully rested before we begin our training, she said. If you say so, not that I am complaining. He didn't have the right to complain since he was essentially leeching off Huang Xiaoli's money. After removing their disguises, Huang Xiaoli entered the bathroom to wash herself first, followed by Tianyang. When Tianyang came out of the bathroom, Huang Xiaoli was sitting by the bed with a pondering expression on her face. What's on your mind? He asked. Huang Xiaoli turned towards him, and with a silent grace, she rose from the bed, enveloping him in a sudden embrace. What are you doing? Tianyang asked in a startled voice. Instead of answering, she asked, You don't like it? Hearing no response from Tianyang, Huang Xiaoli released him just enough to where they could see each other's faces, revealing her flushed face. In the ensuing moment, she closed her eyes and advanced towards him, her lips subtly pressed forward, her intentions as unmistakable as daylight. Though taken by surprise, Tianyang did not reject Huang Xiaoli's kiss and accepted it. Once the kiss ended, the two of them silently stared at each other, unsure of how they should advance. Eventually, Tianyang made the first move and led her to the bed. He proceeded to remove her clothes, to which Huang Xiaoli did not object. A few moments later, Huang Xiaoli's beautiful and slender body lay exposed on the bed, a sight for Tianyang's eyes to feast upon. He gently caressed her smooth skin with his fingers, eliciting sensations that caused her to tremble. Sometime later, when Tianyang removed his clothes, Huang Xiaoli spoke in a bashful voice, "This is my first time. The same goes for me." Tianyang admitted that he had no prior experience, just like her. Soon, the room became filled with Huang Xiaoli's voice, resonating with pleasure. Their session would last for many hours until Huang Xiaoli fell asleep from exhaustion. When they woke up the following day, they would repeat it with increased intensity. Over the next few days, Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli would make love, sleep, wake up, and repeat, almost as if they didn't know how to do anything else. Very few words were shared between them during these sessions, but their actions and responses to set actions were more than enough for them to understand each other. On the sixth day, the day before their time at the hotel was up, they cleaned themselves and spent the rest of their time cultivating and recovering their stamina. They left the hotel on the morning of the seventh day and used the teleportation array to return to the southern stronghold, where they would spend the next few weeks training. Finally, they are gone. The manager signed in relief after seeing Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli leave his hotel. Since the walls were thin, all the sound they made during their fun session was overheard by the manager. However, in the manager's view, both Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli were men, so one could imagine what was going through his mind when he heard such noises. Fortunately for him, the noises ceased completely on the third day. It was also on that day that Tianyang discovered Huang Xiaoli was also an array master, albeit only at level 1, when she created a sound barrier in their room. After they left the hotel, Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli left the city to hunt magical beasts. However, since Huang Xiaoli's cultivation was too weak for her to fight beside him, she would support him from a safe distance and set up traps using arrays whenever she could. They continued this for the next several weeks. C1361 Training Together. Chapter 1361 Training Together. 1361 Training Together. Look. This monster has a core, Huang Xiaoli announced in an excited tone as she dug out a monster core from the magical beast they just slew. This is our second one today. How lucky. Tianyang smiled. They've been hunting magical beasts non-stop for the past month. After killing a magical beast, they would sell its valuable parts to the merchants for money, and keep the cores to boost their own cultivation. As for the money they earned through selling magical beast parts, they would use it to purchase appearance-reforming pills and medicine. Any leftovers would be used to further boost their cultivation. They would stop hunting at the end of every week to spend a day in a hotel in order to clean themselves among other things at night. During this month-long period, Tianyang increased his cultivation to the third-level Spirit Lord. Huang Xiaoli saw the biggest improvements, reaching the peak of Spirit Grandmaster. When Tianyang saw how fast Huang Xiaoli was advancing, it reminded him of his own lack of talent. Despite most of the resources going towards him, Huang Xiaoli was still advancing faster than he did at her level. It's been a little over 2 months since they started their journey to the Desolate Continent, and they have spent about a month and a half on the Desolate Continent itself. How long do you plan on staying in this place? Huang Xiaoli asked him as they lay on the bed at the end of their love session. I applied for 3 months of leave, and I intended to spend at least a month training here, he said. In that case, you are already late since it will take us at least another month to return to the sect. I know. You're not worried about punishment? I heard they could be quite severe, she said in a worried tone. This won't be my first time staying outside the sect longer than I am supposed to, and I have a friend at the sect to rely on during such times. What about you? You're a fellow disciple too. I requested 4 months of leave, so I still have some time, she said. Even if I return to the sect late, my situation should give me some leeway. Despite mentioning her family's situation, Huang Xiaoli only sounded a little melancholic, a testament to how much she had grown since then. There is a ship sailing to and from the Desolate Continent at the beginning of every month, so we can leave in 2 weeks, Tianyang said. What will you do once you return? Do you have any other family members at home? He suddenly asked. I'm not sure, but I still have my grandparents, she said. How about your family? I'm the only one left, he calmly said. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't be. In fact, I don't know anything about my real parents. According to the village I grew up in, I was abandoned there shortly after birth. I was adopted by a single mother who was living alone with her daughter, who became my sister. They were killed before I turned 10, and I have been living alone since then. That's... Huang Xiaoli was shocked by his background, which she was learning about for the first time. Their conversation ended shortly after, and they fell asleep a little later. They continued their training the following day. In the blink of an eye, another 10 days passed. Let's start making our way to the docks, said Tianyang after they cleaned their bodies at the hotel. All right. The docks were located about 100 miles away from the southern stronghold, so it didn't take too long for them to reach their destination. At the docks, a massive ship was stationed with some people already boarding it. That must be the swimming dragon, Huang Xiaoli said after seeing the dragon's head at the front of the ship. There were 3 different ships that traveled to and from the Desolate continent: the Raging Serpent, the Wandering Koi, and the Swimming Dragon. However, with the Raging Serpent destroyed by the Flying Leviathan, there were only 2 working ships now. Let's get our room, Tianyang said as he approached the dock. Huang Xiaoli happily followed along. However, just as they took a couple of steps, the ground suddenly shook violently, reminiscent of the event that occurred nearly 3 months ago with the sea demon. What's happening? Just as Huang Xiaoli spoke, a black wall suddenly erupted from the edge of the land, enveloping the entire desolate continent like some kind of dome. This black dome covered the entire sky, blocking everything except sunlight. In the wake of the black dome's emergence, an authoritative voice echoed across the desolate continent. The desolate continent has just been sealed. No entry or exit shall be permitted until the entity known as Colossal is exterminated. Shortly after this announcement, the world started to tremble again as multiple waves of intense spiritual energy swept the desolate continent, almost as though there were multiple immortal experts fighting on the land. What the hell is happening? Who was that speaking? Panic screaming could be heard coming from the ship in the distance. In fact, everyone on the continent was demanding for answers, but the voice did not return, leaving them to speculate. I don't know what is happening exactly, but it's obvious that someone is trying to hunt the Colossal, Tianyang said to Huang Xiaoli. But what does that have to do with us? They can't keep everyone in here because of that. Tianyang looked at the dome in the sky and sighed. When you are powerful enough, you can do anything you want. After all, who will stop you? Anyways, let's get to the ship first. Maybe they can still leave, Tianyang suggested a moment later. Okay. They quickly approached the ship, ignoring the powerful waves of spiritual energy that were constantly sweeping across the continent. C1362 Unable to Enter or Leave. Chapter 1362 Unable to Enter or Leave. 1362 Unable to Enter or Leave. By the time Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli arrived at the ship, the swimming dragon was already released from the docks and sailing towards the black wall a few miles away. Should we just ride the ship? Huang Xiaoli asked Tianyang, who could simply fly them to the ship. We'll get closer to the ship, but we won't board it just yet, he said, worried that something might happen once the ship reaches the wall. Okay. Tianyang carried her into the sky and chased after the ship. A few moments later, the ship reached the wall, and Tianyang watched as the swimming dragon crashed into the wall. Bang! The instant the front of the ship made contact with the black wall, an unfathomable force emanated from it, repelling the vessel. The swimming dragon soared out of the sea, hurtling dozens of miles into the continent before crashing into the ground. Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli's eyes were wide open after witnessing such a scene. I'm glad we didn't get on that ship, Huang Xiaoli mumbled in a dazed voice. Yeah. Tianyang nodded in agreement. What should we do now? She asked a moment later. There's nothing we can do but wait it out. The barrier should disappear once these experts slay the Colossal and accomplish their goal. Hopefully it won't take too long. She sighed. After returning to land, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli sat on the ground and patiently waited for the dome to disappear. However, waves of spiritual energy continued to appear even days later, and the black dome still enveloped the continent. This is getting ridiculous. How can they fight for days without rest? Huang Shaoli sighed out loud. These experts have unfathomable prowess. I cannot even tell what their cultivation level is. Tianyang shook his head. Just to fight the Colossal requires one to be a divine king, so they are at least above that level. Divine king. They are truly an existence unfathomable to us, who are still in the spirit realm. Sometime later, Tianyang suggested. Since it looks like this will take a while, let's return to the city. Okay. When they arrived at the southern stronghold, Tianyang was surprised to see how many people were in the city. I've never seen this place so crowded before. They can't even walk around without constantly rubbing shoulders. Huang Shaoli was shocked by the scene. Not only was the city brimming with people, but there were also hundreds of individuals camping around the city on the outside. Should we also set up a tent outside? Huang Shaoli asked. I doubt we'll be able to find a room in the hotel anyway. He nodded. They quickly found an empty spot to set up their tent, something they'd purchased during the earlier days of their training. As they prepared their tent, Tianyang could hear the others around them talking to each other. I'm telling you, there are over 100 Divine Realm cultivators fighting the Colossal. I saw it with my own eyes. What were their cultivation levels? I can only sense up to Divine Emperor, and out of the 100 or so experts fighting, I could only sense 3 Divine Emperors, so everyone else must be higher than Divine Emperor. Heavens! This must be an all-out war with the Colossal. Why are they even targeting the Colossal? It doesn't even attack anyone unless provoked. It might be due to a certain rumor. What rumor? According to the rumor, there exists an Immortal's graveyard somewhere within the Desolate continent. This Immortal was a golden Immortal when he was still alive, so he must have left behind some insanely powerful treasure. Some even speculate that the Colossal has something to do with that Immortal. That it might be the key to finding the Immortal's graveyard. There's no way. How many cultivators have reached the realm of Golden Immortal since the beginning of time? Less than 5. If this rumor is true, it would be a historical discovery. Golden Immortal. Tianyang muttered after hearing this information. During this period of time, Golden Immortal was the highest level of cultivation known to man, so it was literally the peak of cultivation. Do you think the rumors are true? Huang Shaoli asked out of curiosity. If it was true, it would make sense why these experts are so desperate to defeat the Colossal. Or they think that the Colossal might have some amazing treasure within its possession, he quickly added. Honestly, that would make more sense. Huang Shaoli agreed. A week later, Tianyang peeked at the sky from inside the tent after his cultivation session ended. It's been 2 weeks now. Just how long does it take for 100 Divine Realm experts to defeat a single opponent? He sighed out loud. Suddenly, someone could be heard shouting in a panicked manner, "Run! Run away! The fight with the Colossal is approaching our direction." What? Shaoli, wake up. We have to leave right now. Tianyang shook her awake. What happened? The Colossal is coming here. What? As they exited the tent, a dark figure emerged on the farthest reaches of the horizon. Its size swiftly expanded, indicating its imminent approach. Huang Shaoli still recalled her first encounter with the Colossal as though it happened yesterday, and her body trembled upon seeing it again. As they tore down their tent, Huang Shaoli asked, "Which way should we go?" The Colossal appeared from the west, so we can only go east. What about the teleportation array? We can use that. However, someone else responded to her. The teleportation arrays have stopped working ever since the barrier appeared. We can only move on foot. That's crazy. Once they packed their stuff, Tianyang and Huang Shaoli began running towards the eastern stronghold with hundreds of others moving in the same direction, resembling that of a village migration. C1363 stuck in a loop. Chapter 1363 Stuck in a Loop. 1363 Stuck in a loop. During their journey to the eastern stronghold, they encountered many magical beasts in their path. However, since many people were traveling together, it made things somewhat manageable. With that being said, there were still many casualties. The journey from the southern stronghold to the eastern stronghold took a little over a month with barely any time to rest. We should be safe for a while now. Tianyang sighed after setting up their tent again. Hearing no response, he looked at Huang Xiaoli, who was silently gazing at the barrier in the sky. How much longer do we have to keep running? This isn't that much different from our encounter with the flying Leviathan. She mumbled in a dazed voice. Are we caught in some kind of loop where we are constantly running away from entities that we cannot even imagine fighting? Unfortunately, this is simply how life for weaklings like us works. Is there truly nothing we can do? She sighed. We can only continue to improve ourselves until the day that we no longer have to run arrives. We will probably be long dead before that happens. While that is very likely, we won't know until we reach that point. Huang Xiaoli asked with a slight smile on her face. How are you able to remain calm and positive all the time? What is your secret? He shook his head. There is no secret. I just find it pointless trying to worry about such things. The fact you can do that is impressive enough, but that's also what I love about you. Time continued to pass. 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. It has been 5 months since the desolate continent became isolated from the rest of the world, and news of its situation had already spread throughout the divine heavens. Damn it! That reckless idiot hasn't returned to the sect for half a year, but his life jade slip is still working, so he's obviously not dead. That idiot must have gone to the desolate continent. Elder Sun kicked her table in frustration. If you are that worried about him, why don't you go there and save him? Someone suggested. That isn't possible as long as that barrier is around the desolated continent. In the first place, this isn't a situation that can be handled by a single individual. If you complain to your family, don't bring them up. I left them for a reason, and I won't go back no matter what. Whatever you say. Despite her words, Elder Sun was already contemplating asking her family for help. Meanwhile, Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli traversed nearly the entire desolate continent during the past 5 months, moving from city to city whenever the Colossal got close. Tianyang's cultivation continued to progress, and eventually reached 5th level Spirit Lord, while Huang Xiaoli surpassed Spirit Grandmaster, and entered the realm of Spirit Lord, quickly catching up to Tianyang. After spending so much time sealed within the desolate continent, they have long stopped wondering when the barrier will be removed, and focused on improving their new lifestyle, and increasing their chances of survival. Our supply of appearance reforming pills will be running out very soon. Huang Xiaoli warned Tianyang. Not only did they have to run from the Colossal, they also had to avoid the gold and money bandits. Even with their current situation, the lawless nature refused to stop. In fact, it even got worse. They tried to travel without their disguises a month into their confinement, but they were immediately recognized by the bandits, forcing them to continue relying on disguises. They started using the appearance reforming pills sparingly and purchased any they could find, but that wasn't enough to keep them from running out of supply. Even my makeup has run out. She sighed. We are already traveling separately from the group, so there's really nothing else we can do. Tianyang shook his head. Why are these damn bandits so persistent anyway? Huang Xiaoli stomped the ground in anger. Omicronem, considering how nobody can enter the land and people are lying left and right, they are probably running out of people to bully. Tianyang said. Also, the fact that we've killed several of their members most likely has something to do with it. That's called self-defense. Murder is still murder. I swear that if we get out of here alive, I will come back in the future to eradicate every last one of them. Huang Xiaoli bellowed. Oh, I'd love to see how you plan on doing that. A foreign voice suddenly responded to her threat. Who's there? Tianyang and Huang Xiaoli immediately went into a combative stance. In response, over 20 people emerged from the shadow, surrounding them. How did I not notice this many people around us? That's impossible. Tianyang was shocked. Are you bastards from gold and money bandits? Huang Shaoli glared at them with killing intent. We're not just from the gold and money bandits. We are the gang. The voice resounded, and it came from a middle-aged man, who was emitting the prowess of a spirit king. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I am the leader is what it means. The man laughed. Tianyang gritted his teeth as he tried to find a way out of their predicament. However, their opponents had a spirit king on their side, who could easily kill both of them by himself. There was simply no way to escape. How did you find us? Tianyang asked. It wasn't difficult. In fact, we could have located you whenever we wanted during these last few months. The only reason we didn't was simply because there were bigger fishes out there to hunt. What do you want from us? Tianyang asked. A cold grin appeared on the leader's face as he spoke. Just one thing, your life. After a pause, he corrected himself. Actually, that would be two things since there are two of you. C1364 Deceiving Himself. Chapter 1364 Deceiving Himself. 1364 Deceiving Himself. Shaoli, listen to me. While I try to block them, you need to run away as fast as possible. Tianyang said to Huang Shaoli through divine sense. What? No way. I will not leave you here to die alone. If you're going to stay here and fight, so will I. She immediately rejected his plan. Damn it. This isn't the time to be stubborn. I promised to protect you. So just listen to me and let me protect you. Despite telling her to run away, Tianyang knew there was essentially no chance he could block them long enough for her to escape, and he was only trying to deceive himself. Do you seriously think you can escape in this situation? The leader suddenly laughed out loud, almost as if he could hear their conversation. Why do you want to kill us? We've never done anything to offend you. Huang Shaoli shouted. But you killed several of my men though? That's self-defense. Then you can consider this as self-defense too. The leader laughed maniacally. Tianyang closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Shaoli, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? Because I have failed to keep my promise. I'm sorry that I couldn't protect you. And nonsense. We can survive this. Just as Wed survived until now. Tianyang didn't respond. Talking between yourselves again? Go ahead. I'll let you say your goodbyes since I am a good person. The leader said. In the following moment, Tianyang suddenly moved. However, he didn't move to attack the bandits. He appeared right beside Huang Shaoli and grabbed her hand. I love you, he muttered to her in a low and gentle voice. I love. The moment Huang Shaoli opened her mouth to respond, Tianyang, using all his strength, tossed her into the air and away from the bandits. Run, he shouted at her. The leader sneered at his pointless attempt and spoke in a commanding tone. Half of you go hunt that escaped rat. Seeing this, Tianyang tried his best to block them. However, he wasn't able to block a single one from chasing after Huang Shaoli. What can a powerless man like you do? The leader of the gang blocked Tianyang from his attempt. Get out of my way. Tianyang unleashed all of his cultivation and attacked the leader. Why struggle when you know it'll be in vain? The leader casually deflected his attack. The difference between Spirit Lord and Spirit King was like heaven and earth. There was simply no chance for a talentless person like Tianyang to overcome such a hurdle. However, the leader didn't immediately kill Tianyang and toyed with him by giving him minor injuries, almost as if the leader wanted his opponent to bleed to death. Many minutes of struggling later, the other bandits returned, and in their grasp was Huang Shaoli's lifeless body. Tianyang lost his strength when he saw her corpse. Oh, took you guys long enough, the leader said to them. The bandit carrying her corpse tossed her body onto the ground like trash and said, the bastard was stronger than expected and even managed to kill two of us. Omicronim, the leader raised an eyebrow when he saw Huang Shaoli's appearance. Ha! Who is this woman? Ah, she was a woman disguised as a man. We didn't realize it until we killed her. The bandit sighed. Truly a pity. We could have had so much fun with a beauty like her. The leader shook his head. He continued, whatever, I'm sure some of the guys back at the base are into this kind of stuff. Keep her corpse for now. Roger. Tianyang remained frozen, almost as though he had turned into stone, his eyes void of light. Hey, are you still alive? The leader suddenly pierced his sword into Tianyang's stomach. Seeing not even the slightest reaction from Tianyang, the leader sighed. How boring. He raised his arm in preparation to behead Tianyang. Right as the leader pulled his sword back, one of the bandits suddenly screamed in a terrified voice, "Leader! Behind you!" Ha! The leader turned around to see a massive ball of flames flying towards them. What the foo? Boom! The ball of flames landed near them, exploding viciously. The leader and half of the bandits there instantly turned to charcoal from the flames while everyone else was blown away by the explosion, including Tianyang, who barely managed to escape the flames because the leader had stood in front of him and blocked most of it. Unbeknownst to them, the ball of flames had been launched by one of the experts fighting the Colossal. Upon missing its target, the ball of flame disappeared into the horizon and happened to land by Tianyang. Fuck. The leader's dead. Run before another attack comes. The surviving bandits scrambled away, ignoring Tianyang, who looked as good as dead anyway. Several days later, someone approached Tianyang's corpse-like body cautiously. Wow, how is this bastard still alive with such injuries? A young man's voice exclaimed in a surprised tone. After a moment of silence, the young man spoke again. Your determination to live must be quite impressive. I cannot allow such a warrior to die like this. The young man proceeded to retrieve a vial of an unknown substance and poured it into Tianyang's mouth. Within moments, the injuries on Tianyang's body started recovering at a rapid rate. A few minutes later, Tianyang slowly opened his eyes. When he sensed something next to him, Tianyang subconsciously attacked. Get your dirty hands off her, you bastards! Tianyang roared. Whoa! The young man swiftly evaded his attack and distanced from Tianyang. Calm down, buddy. I'm not here to hurt you. After coming to his senses, Tianyang looked around frantically. Where are the bandits? Where's Xiao? I haven't seen any bandits, nor do I know who this Xiao is. The young man shrugged. Who are you? Tianyang asked the young man with gold-colored hair. Where are your manners? You should introduce yourself first before asking for another's identity. Whatever, I am in a good mood so I will look past it. I'm Kulas, what about you? The young man introduced himself. C1365 Immortal Ensnaring Vault. Chapter 1365 Immortal Ensnaring Vault. 1365 Immortal Ensnaring Vault. Tianyang, huh? Why were you on the brink of death, Tianyang? Kulas asked him. After hearing this question, he recalled everything that had happened to him before he was knocked unconscious, followed by a tsunami of emotion that consumed him with anguish. Xiao. He ignored Kulas and ran to the crater created by the ball of flames. However, there was no sign of Huang Xiao. The ball of flames that appeared out of thin air had erased all signs of the bandits, along with Huang Xiao's corpse. Tianyang fell to his knees and started bawling his eyes out. Xiao, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ah! Tianyang released a deafening howl that carried immense anguish and anger. Kulas watched this scene unfold before him with a serious expression on his face. Even though he didn't know the situation, even a blind man could tell that something tragic had occurred to Tianyang. Remained in the kneeling position for many hours on end without moving a single muscle. Eventually, Kulas approached him from behind and spoke in a gentle voice. I don't know what happened, but you clearly have unfinished business. Are you going to sit there until you die from anguish? Or are you going to do something about it? Tianyang was unresponsive. Kulas continued trying. This Xiao, was she your lover or something? Tianyang's body had a slight reaction when he heard her name. Seeing this, Kulas continued. Judging by the scene, it's been several days since whatever happened here ended. You've managed to survive so many days with injuries that would have killed someone else over 100 times. Your determination is unfathomable. I know you are not someone to give up no matter how bad things get. My injuries? Did you heal them for me? Tianyang suddenly asked. That's right. I had a feeling that you weren't meant to die here, so I fed you some medicine. Kulas correct. That's right. Thank you, Kulas. Tianyang wiped his face and slowly stood up. He lifted his head and stared at heaven with a profound expression on his face. The barrier, it's gone? At that moment, Tianyang realized the barrier that had ensnared the desolate continent had vanished. The immortal ensnaring vault? It was lifted 3 days ago. Kulas revealed. Huh. Tianyang looked at him with wide eyes. Why do you know? After a brief pause, his face twisted with anger. Don't tell me you are responsible for that barrier. What? Kulas reacted to his accusation with shock. That's quite the accusation. Do I look like someone who could deploy such a priceless treasure? That was something done by the Immortal clans. Immortal clans? What are you talking about? Tianyang frowned. You really don't know anything, huh? Well, I don't blame you. Kulas shrugged. Omicron he continued. The barrier that sealed this place for half a year is called the Immortal Ensnaring Vault, a treasure owned by one of the 9 Immortal clans. It was activated to prevent the key from escaping when the Immortal clans worked together to subjugate it. Key? Are you talking about the Colossal? Yes, the Colossal was a key to open the Immortals' graveyard sealed within this land. If the Immortal clans hadn't sealed this place, the key would have escaped. Anyways, the Immortal clan succeeded in eliminating the key and revealed the entrance to the Immortals' graveyard. Now everyone around the divine heavens is rushing to this place to enter the Immortals' graveyard. Tianyang gritted his teeth after learning this information. Because of these Immortal clan bastards, Xiao had to suffer and die an undeserving death. He clenched his fists so hard that it began to bleed. Why you should keep such words to yourself. If anyone from the Immortal clans were to hear you, they would have skinned you alive. Kulas nervously said as he looked around to ensure they were alone. 9 Immortal clans. I swear I will make you pay for this. Tianyang's eyes flickered with a vicious light. Hey, what do you think about visiting the Immortals' graveyard with me? Kulas suddenly said. I decline. Tianyang frowned, his reluctance etched across his face. Why not? Why should I? He immediately rebuked. Well, for one, you can acquire all kinds of powerful treasures if you're lucky, and if you're fated, you might even acquire the Immortal's legacy. If you had that, standing at the peak of the world wouldn't be a fantasy. As for the second reason, you kind of owe me for saving your life, you know? Kulas chuckled. Tianyang fell silent and began pondering. Why me? No special reason. I just think we were brought together by fate, and I admire your tenacity. If I had a guy like you around, my chances of survival would surely increase. What kind of bullshit reasoning is that? Tianyang snickered. But it is true that I owe him for saving my life, he sighed inwardly. Think about it. There's a reason that even geniuses from top sects are scurrying to come here. He's right. This could be an opportunity for me to finally achieve my dreams. Of course, I'm not forcing you to come with me. I'm just asking as a friend. Since when did we become friends? I'm not sure. A few moments ago, I suppose? Kulas laughed heartily. Tianyang rubbed his eyes inside. All right, I will accompany you to the Immortal's graveyard. Kulas' eyes immediately brightened. Hell yeah, that's what I am talking about. The entrance will be opened in 2 days' time, so we should just barely make it to witness the opening if we move out now. Follow me. Right as Tianyang prepared to follow Kulas, he noticed a subtle glint in the corner of his eyes. That's... Tianyang immediately went to pick up the object shining on the ground. Xiao, he muttered in a low voice as he recognized the object as Huang Xiaoli's spatial ring. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Kulas called for him from a distance. Tianyang tightly held the ring and pressed it against his heart before muttering in a resolute voice. I swear, I will seek justice for you even if it's the last thing I do. C1366 Definition of Talent. Chapter 1366 Definition of Talent. 1366 Definition of Talent. After putting away Huang Xiaoli's storage ring, Tianyang went after Kulas, who was waiting for him in the distance. What did you find on the ground? Kulas asked him with a curious gaze. A purpose, he responded in a cold voice. Seeing his serious expression, Kulas didn't question further. Instead, Tianyang inquired more information about the Immortal's graveyard. Tell me more about this Immortal's graveyard. Kulas nodded and shared his knowledge. The Immortal's graveyard's official name is Han Zexian's tomb. Han Zexian was one of the top golden immortals, but he vanished about 30,000 years ago. The 9 immortal clans eventually learned that he was last seen in this desolate continent, and spent the last 1,000 years looking for him. In the end, all they found was the entrance to a sealed tomb. On the door to the tomb was a clue, which hinted at the Colossal. After eliminating the Colossal, the seal to the tomb was released. Tianyang took a moment to digest this information before asking. The 9 immortal clans must have expended an immense amount of resources to deal with the Colossal since it took them half a year of constant fighting to defeat it. Are they really allowing everyone to enter it? Sounds a little suspicious. Even the 9 immortal clans wouldn't dare to be so selfish. If this was just any ordinary tomb, then they would have been able to do so, but Han Zexian was no ordinary cultivator. He was the first cultivator to ever reach Golden Immortal, and he helped the cultivation scene advance tremendously. He was a public figure who shared his experience and knowledge with as many people as he could. If the 9 immortal clans were to dare take his tomb for themselves, you can imagine how the world would react. Han Zexian. Tianyang mumbled. He's heard of this name several times during lectures at the sect, but he never really cared too much about it. Though there is one caveat for making the tomb public. The 9 immortal clans get to send in their people first, and nobody can enter for the first 7 days. After the 7-day period ends, it will be a free-for-all. But the tomb will open in 2 days, so there are still 9 days before we can enter? Indeed. I came here early to witness the opening of the tomb. Kulas nodded. A few minutes later, they encountered a magical beast in the Spirit Emperor realm. Don't worry, I got this. Kulas suddenly charged at the magical beast without any hesitation. Wielding 2 gauntlets on his fists, he released a powerful punch, striking the magical beast directly between its eyes and killing it in a single strike. He's a Spirit Emperor at such an age. He must be a genius from a renowned sect. Tianyang was greatly surprised. It was no wonder he couldn't sense Kulas' cultivation. As long as we don't encounter any spirit sovereigns or above, I'll get rid of them, Kulas said as he removed his gauntlets. How old are you? Tianyang asked out of curiosity. I'm 20 years old, he calmly said. Tianyang was speechless. Kulas was half his age, but had already become a Spirit Emperor. The difference in their talent was so vast that he didn't even want to think about it. At 20 years old, Tianyang was still a mere spirit apprentice. While he most likely started cultivation much later than Kulas, it wouldn't have made a difference. Even if Tianyang started at the moment of his birth, he wouldn't have been a Spirit Emperor by now. Kulas saw the look of defeat on Tianyang's face and smiled. Talent isn't everything in this world. Tianyang looked at him and sneered. That's easy to say for someone as talented as you. Kulas shook his head and said, while I may seem talented in your eyes, there are countless geniuses more talented than me. If you ask me what I think is more important than talent, it would be one's fate. No matter how talented one may be, if you were not fated to achieve great things, what use is such talent? Countless geniuses above me have perished before they even got the chance to flourish. What use is fate if you have no talents? You'd still live a life as a powerless ant. Kulas smiled and said, that's the thing, you don't know what fate has in store for you until it happens. While you may be born without talents, who's to say that you won't acquire talents in the future? Acquiring talents? That's nonsense, Tianyang sneered. I don't know what your definition of talent is, but one's talent is not set in stone. There are countless treasures and mythical techniques out there that can turn someone ordinary into a dragon overnight. Tianyang could not deny Kulas' words. Kulas suddenly continued. Why do you think places like the Immortal's graveyard exist? So the rich could get richer? So the talented could become even more powerful? While that is certainly possible and happens all the time, I believe their main purpose is to attract the one with the strongest fate. Who knows, you might acquire Han Zexian's legacy and become a dragon. Yeah, right. Kulas looked at him with a profound smile and said, "That said, I think you're already quite talented." "Me? Talented? Ah, that's the funniest joke I've heard all decade long. Being able to survive is also a talent. I can tell at a glance that you're someone who has encountered countless life or death situations, more than anyone that I know. Despite having less talent than those geniuses I know, you've managed to survive this long. If that isn't a talent, I don't know what is." "You call that talent? If so, I'd rather not have such talents. What's the point if I keep barely managing to survive like a beggar? That's just called a struggle. I guess it won't be easy to change your mind, but I'm sure you'll eventually realize the truth." Kulas laughed heartily. What a weird fellow. Tianyang shook his head inwardly. Regardless if you are a sect leader or a rogue cultivator, everyone else must wait 7 full days before they are allowed to enter, or they will immediately be killed. There will be no exceptions. The representative proceeded to open the door by placing an item on it. The doors opened inwardly the next moment, unveiling the entrance to another dimension. Suddenly, before anyone from the 9 immortal clans could even move, several dozen figures from the crowd behind them rushed toward the entrance. "Let's see if you can stop all of us at once." However, before these individuals could even get close to the entrance, several experts from the 9 immortal clans moved with such swiftness that all of the rebels were slain faster than one could even blink their eyes. These rebels were not weak by any means. Most of them were spirit emperors, and above with a few even at the divine realm. Nonetheless, they were all slain with a single strike. Most of the people there didn't even bat an eyelid after witnessing such a scene, almost as if they were all expecting a few rebels to appear. "Does anyone else want to try?" A calm voice resounded a moment later, carrying the pressure of an immortal. The voice was met with silence. A few moments later, the people from the 9 immortal clans jumped into the entrance, disappearing into the ground. Over the next several days, even more people arrived at the site. "There are millions of people here." Tianyang swallowed nervously, as had never seen so many experts gathered in one place before. Suddenly, he sensed a familiar presence appearing above him. Ha! When he looked up, he could see a woman staring at him with an enraged expression on her beautiful face. "A senior son." He immediately recognized her as Elder Sunday. "As I thought, you'd disappeared to this place." Elder Sun landed in front of him. "What are you doing here, senior? You dare ask me such a question after disappearing for nearly a year? Do you want me to beat you right now?" Elder Sun reprimanded him as she grabbed one of his ears and began pulling on it with immense strength. "Ah! Stop! You'll tear it right off." Tianyang cried out loud. "If that'll stop you from doing any more reckless things, I'll tear both of them off." Kulas stared at their performance with an entertained face. "Who's this beautiful fairy?" he asked. "She's a sect elder from my sect," Tianyang said. "And who are you?" Elder Sun looked at Kulas. "I'm Kulas," he smiled. "He's my savior." Tianyang added. "Savior?" Elder Sun raised an eyebrow. Kulas shook his head and said, "I didn't do much, honestly. He did most of the surviving. I just happened to come across him and fed him some spare medicine I had. I'm not surprised. He's even more tenacious than a cockroach," Elder Sun said. She suddenly released Tianyang's ear and gave a courteous bow to Kulas. "Regardless, I thank you for saving him. Please raise your head, senior. I only did what was right." Elder Sun turned to look at Tianyang and demanded in a cold voice, "You better explain to me everything that happened." C1368 Elder Sun. Chapter 1368 Elder Sun. 1368 Elder Sun. I have to explain everything? Unwanted memories flashed within Tianyang's head, causing his expression to darken. "What?" Elder Sun was startled by Tianyang's dark expression, which seemed to be filled with anguish. Although she had seen him being down before, especially when one mentioned about his lack of talents, she had never seen such a defeated look on his face. What did he experience during the past year? She swallowed nervously as she wondered. What happened to you? She gathered enough courage to ask him a moment later. However, Tianyang remained silent. Seeing this, Elder Sun turned to look at Kulas for answers, but he merely shrugged while shaking his head in silence. Whatever. You don't have to tell me now, but whenever you are ready. Tianyang silently nodded, and his expression relaxed a little. Anyways, our sect will also be participating in this event. They are currently making their way here as we speak. I just happened to arrive first. Elder Sun said, omitting the reason she separated from the sect just to arrive at the desolate continent faster. The sect. Tianyang mumbled. He then asked, do I have to move with the sect inside the tomb? Of course not. In the first place, many sect elders and even the sect leader himself will be participating, so it's not an activity meant for disciples. While disciples are allowed to participate if they desire, they won't receive any assistance from the sect, so you're by yourself once inside. Elder Sun said. Is that so? Tianyang wasn't surprised. The tomb of a golden immortal attracted experts more than others. It's not like we can compete with them, anyway. Tianyang had already anticipated that the experts would take most of the treasures for themselves while he and the others fought for the leftovers. Kulas suddenly spoke. Speaking of inside, none of the people from the 9 immortal clans have returned since they entered the tomb. Normally, they would scout the place first before engaging it fully, but not this time. Either they are really tight on time, or they've all perished inside. What? There's no way the 9 immortal clans would perish inside a tomb, even if it belongs to a golden immortal. Elder Sun scoffed at that idea. The 9 immortal clans aren't merely powerful. They represent the most powerful families in the divine heavens. If these formidable forces prove unable to survive Han Zexian's tomb, what hope could the others harbor for survival? Would they not be marching willingly into their own graves? Even if you say that, it's almost been 7 days since they entered, but not a single one of them has returned. Kulas looked at the door with a pondering look on his face. Tianyang looked at Elder Sun and asked, do you also plan on participating? She shook her head. No, I have no interest in the tomb. Then why did you even come here in the first place? Tianyang raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. I have my own reasons. After a brief pause, she looked at him and continued. You're entering the tomb, right? He nodded with a serious expression. Is there anything I can say that will persuade you otherwise? Tianyang stayed silent, but his expression was as stubborn as ever. Elder Sun sighed. How stupid of me to think I could persuade you when it hasn't worked since the beginning. I know you're worried about me, but I have to grow stronger no matter what. I'm sorry, Senior. Tianyang said. Who would be worried about a reckless brat like you? Elder Sun sneered. Then she continued. Give me your hand, I'll repair the life-saving treasure in you. However, Tianyang merely reacted with a puzzled look on his face. What life-saving treasure? I don't have anything like that on me, he said. Without explaining further, Elder Sun grabbed his hand and closed her eyes. The following moment, Tianyang could feel her spiritual energy entering his dantian. Although he couldn't see it, he could feel something being restored inside his body. Once she repaired the treasure, Elder Sun opened her eyes to see a baffled look on Tianyang's face. What is going on? He inquired again. Elder Sun then explained. After seeing how you love to court death so much, I planted a life-saving treasure within your body. When did you do something like that? Tianyang exclaimed. She sighed. Long before you even became an inner disciple. However, it never activated until recently. Recently? How recently? Tianyang had a premonition that he already knew the answer before even asking. About a month after you disappeared from the sect, I suppose. Elder Sun answered. Tianyang immediately recalled how he managed to survive the massive sea demon strike. That was because of the life-saving treasure you'd given me? Tianyang muttered in a dazed voice. That's right, she immediately replied. I don't know what situation you were in at that time, but the life-saving treasure only activates when it senses certain death, teleporting you to the nearest safe place. In that case, at that time, Her family had already been. Even though he had a suspicion that the Huang family hadn't survived the sea demon's attack, having confirmation was an entirely different matter. Why? Why didn't you tell me before? Tianyang suddenly glared at Elder Sun with a hint of anger in his gaze. If he'd known about it beforehand, he could have saved the entire Huang family, and things on the Desolate continent would have played out differently. We encountered those bastards because we searched for Xiao Li's family. If they had been alive, she could have survived. Her entire family could have survived. Why didn't you tell me, senior son? Why? Tianyang suddenly shouted at her with tears flowing down his face. Elder Sun was too stunned by Tianyang's outburst to give him a response in time. She could only stare at Tianyang's crying face, something she'd only ever seen once before, and even then, it wasn't as emotional. C1369 Tombs Restriction. Chapter 1369 Tombs Restriction. 1369 Tombs Restriction. After seeing Tianyang's expression, Elder Sun's entire being froze on the spot, her mind blank. Why didn't she tell Tianyang about the life-saving treasure? Because she wanted to surprise him? Because she didn't want it to seem like she cared too much about him? Or was it simply due to negligence? Elder Sun would have had a hard time answering Tianyang's question, even if he wasn't staring at her with such an intense gaze. What's happening there? Did he get rejected or something? Isn't he a little too old to cry like a baby? The people around them were entertained by the situation. However, Tianyang quickly regained control over his emotions and muttered, "Please take back the life-saving treasure." Huh? Elder Sun's eyes widened with shock. What are you saying? I don't know why you're angry, but if you're going to explore the tomb, I don't care about that. Just take it back, or I'll do it my way. Seeing the stubborn look on Tianyang's face, Elder Sun merely sighed and silently retrieved the life-saving treasure from his body. There are you. Right as Elder Sun opened her mouth to speak, Tianyang suddenly bowed to her and said, "Thank you for everything until now, Senior Sunday." Without explaining further, Tianyang turned around and walked away, leaving Elder Sun completely dumbfounded. What is this feeling in my heart? Why does it hurt so much? He's just a mere disciple. Elder Sun wondered to herself as she watched Tianyang's figure disappear into the crowd, as she'd never felt such an emotion before. After witnessing what unfolded before him, Kulas spoke in a solemn tone. "I don't know what happened to him, but he was in a miserable shape when I found him, almost as if he witnessed his lover being killed before his eyes. Good luck." Kulas went after Tianyang, leaving Elder Sun alone in a daze. A few people in the crowd saw this as an opportunity to approach Elder Sunday. "Excuse me, fairy. Stay away from me, you worms." Elder Sun suddenly glared at them with intense killing intent, sending chills down their entire being. Her presence was so immense that it attracted the attention of several experts. What is that woman doing here? I almost didn't recognize her because of her cultivation, but isn't she? These experts recognized her after staring at her face for a moment, their faces filled with surprise after realizing her identity. Meanwhile, Tianyang finally stopped moving after moving far away from his original location. After calming down, he realized that had directed some of his self-hatred toward Elder Sun after learning that she was responsible for saving him from certain death. I'm truly pathetic, he sighed inwardly. While it was true that Elder Sun had secretly hidden a life-saving treasure in his body, it wasn't done out of malice but because she was worried for him. Despite that, I pushed my responsibility to her when I saw a chance. If it weren't for Senior Sun, I wouldn't have survived long enough to bond with Huang Xiaoli, much less spend so much time with her. Tianyang realized that he should have thanked Elder Sun instead of cutting ties with her. However, this might be for the best. I have relied on her for many years. Ever since I was an outer disciple, I cannot rely on her to save me every time my life is in danger for the rest of my life, or I will never truly become strong. He knew that had messed up his relationship with Elder Sun, but he also understood that he could not rely on her forever. It was a bitter way to end such a good relationship, and he might even regret it until the end of time, but there was no going back. There you are. Kulas eventually caught up to him. Sorry you had to see that, and I even left you back there, Tianyang said to him. Kulas did not immediately respond, as he was too distracted by Tianyang's expression. You can still go back and apologize to her, he said a moment later. Tianyang couldn't help but show a bittersweet smile after hearing his words. Apologize? She's not the type to accept an apology like that, and it's not like we had a special relationship. Are you sure about that? Kulas raised an eyebrow. He then continued. Even if that was the case, why did you return the life-saving treasure? That was quite the stupid thing to do if you ask me. You're now going to enter the tomb empty-handed. Don't kick yourself later. Tianyang shrugged. If I die inside the tomb, that simply means I wasn't fated to achieve great things in this life. And because I cut ties with Senior Sun, my death won't bother her as much. What a twisted way of thinking. But I don't dislike it. Kulas chuckled. He then continued. It's a pity, especially since that senior was very pretty. Even if she's the prettiest woman in the world, nothing will happen between us. She's a sect elder and I am a disciple. We are fated to walk different paths. Kulas shook his head. Fate works in mysterious ways, and you speak as if you can control or see one's fate, but we both know that isn't possible. What? Right as Tianyang opened his mouth to respond, the surroundings suddenly grew rowdy. What's happening? Is the tomb finally open to the rest of us? It should be about that time now. Tianyang looked around. Kulas used his divine sense to see the situation and said, They've returned. The 9 immortal clans just left the tomb. After a brief pause he continued, but not all of them. Only a dozen people have come out, and we know far more have gone inside. Let's see what they have to say. Sometime later, those who exited the tomb revealed the situation inside the tomb, which greatly surprised everyone there. Regardless of your cultivation, whether you are a spirit emperor or a golden immortal, your cultivation will be restricted to the 9th level spirit king once you enter the tomb, and you are forbidden from leaving the tomb for 7 days. C1370 Entering Han Zexian's Tomb. Chapter 1370 Entering Han Zexian's Tomb. 1370 Entering Han Zexian's Tomb. Our cultivations are restricted to the peak of Spirit King? What about those already below that level? Someone inquired, as he was only a 3rd level Spirit King. Then you will simply remain at that level. This information caused an uproar. So those below 9th level Spirit King are at a severe disadvantage. What's the point of restricting our cultivation when those above peak Spirit King are still able to squash everyone else with superior techniques and experience? Aren't they trying to even the playing field with the limit? What about the tomb itself? What kind of environment is it? Someone else asked. The tomb is divided into 2 sections. The first section of the tomb is trial-based, where those below the 9th level Spirit King are able to do trials for cultivation resources. These resources are incredibly rare and potent, and would allow even a Spirit Lord to reach peak Spirit King in a short time. However, these resources cannot be taken out of the tomb, so you'll have to use them before leaving. Tianyang's eyes lit ablaze with excitement after hearing this information. He couldn't be any happier to hear that he could quickly raise his cultivation inside the tomb. In the second section, a vast expanse filled with mysteries and powerful magical beasts could be explored freely. The scale of this tomb is unfathomably massive, and it's not a place one could fully experience in a few weeks. What do you think? Kulas suddenly asked. I'll be spending all of my time doing trials until I reach peak Spirit King, he calmly said. I know I said that I'd explore the tomb with you, but this is not something I can give up. Nor is there a point for those below Spirit King to explore any further. Kulas nodded. I understand, but worry not, I didn't intend on going straight to the second section in the first place. My real purpose of visiting the tomb was to train, and I couldn't care less about Han Zexian's legacy. These trials sound fun, so we'll do some with you. Tianyang nodded. Sometime later, the representative from the 9 immortal clans announced. It has been 7 days since the tomb opened. Han Zexian's tomb is officially open to the public now. However, to prevent a cluster, Only 1,000 may enter every 15 minutes. Good luck, fellow cultivators. The moment he said that, hundreds of people charged into the ground, disappearing from the desolate continent. Since the people in the front went inside first, Tianyang and Kulas still had to wait a while before it was their turn. Several hours later, Tianyang and Kulas jumped into the portal in the ground, entering the tomb. The moment they stepped foot into the tomb, Kulas immediately felt his cultivation being suppressed by an unfathomable force, lowering it to the peak of Spirit King. As for Tianyang, who was only a spirit lord, he didn't feel anything different, but he had a look of awe on his face. This is inside a tomb? Tianyang swallowed nervously as he stared at the vast land before him, almost as if had entered a different world. Is this your first time exploring a tomb? Kulas asked after seeing his excited face. Of course. But you sound experienced. No, this is also my first time exploring a tomb. A real one, at least. There are fake tombs. Naturally. Those are much smaller in size and are often traps for cultivators. Kulas then asked, where should we go? Unless you have a map, we can only pick a direction and hope for the best. Tianyang shrugged. In other words, leave it to fate, huh? Kulas smiled. Tianyang retrieved his sword and casually tossed it into the sky. When it landed a moment later, he said, let's go where the tip of the sword is directed. Sounds fun. The two of them proceeded to fly in that direction. Several hours later. This place is truly massive. We've traveled for hours, but we've encountered nothing but grass. Kulas sighed. Right as Kulas finished his sentence, he noticed something appear on the horizon and continued. I see something up front. Sometime later, they landed before the thing that Kulas saw. There were already hundreds of people there, and they were all sitting silently around a tall altar made of stone. What's happening here? Tianyang mumbled with a pondering face as they approached the stone altar. How can they be so carefree and cultivate out in the open like this? Aren't they worried about getting attacked? Kulas wondered out loud. When they reached within a certain distance of the altar, a voice suddenly rang inside their head. You have entered the trials area. While inside this area, you are forbidden from attacking another challenger. Rebels will be met with a swift death. When you are ready to start the trial, just say it out loud. Tianyang could feel the atmosphere change when he entered the trial area, almost as though had been teleported to another place, but the scenery did not change. Well, that explains why they seem to carefree. Kulas shrugged. Meanwhile, Tianyang quickly sat down and closed his eyes. After taking a deep breath, he muttered out loud, begin trial. The very next moment, Tianyang could feel something enter his consciousness, causing him to fall into a trance-like state. When he opened his eyes a moment later, he found himself in an entirely different place, standing on a small, empty island while being surrounded by water. An ocean? Did I get teleported, or is this an illusion? He wondered out loud as he looked around. Suddenly, a familiar voice resounded. Defeat your opponent to complete the trial. The very next second, Tianyang noticed something massive emerging from the water in the distance. That's. Tianyang swallowed nervously when he saw its snake-like figure. A flying Leviathan. He exclaimed. The entity that came out of the water was a flying Leviathan, and it was soaring towards Tianyang at a rapid speed. C1371 Golden Ginseng Roots. Chapter 1371 Golden Ginseng Roots. 1371 Golden Ginseng Roots. Shit. How am I supposed to defeat a flying Leviathan at my level? I'd only be asking for a quick death. Tianyang panicked a little when he saw the flying Leviathan soaring in his direction. However, upon closer inspection, he noticed that the flying Leviathan had the cultivation of a 6th-level spirit lord, being only a single level above his own. With that being said, that solitary level represented a significant gap that most people wouldn't be able to surpass. Tianyang gritted his teeth and muttered to himself. How are you going to avenge Xiao if you cannot even take care of a single flying Leviathan? Without waiting for the flying Leviathan to arrive, Tianyang tightly held onto his sword and flew towards the monster on his own accord with a fierce expression on his face. Evening releasing a battle cry right before confronting the sea demon. The flying Leviathan had an immensely large figure compared to him. Just a single scale on its body was enough to cover Tianyang's entire figure. Moreover, it was extremely swift and agile with its movements. Fortunately, its attacks were quite simple, as it only knew how to swing its tail and charge at him in a straight line. With that being said, Tianyang still struggled to dodge its attacks and nearly got hit several times. Every time he narrowly dodged its attack, Tianyang would counterattack, sliding his blade across the flying Leviathan's body. However, due to the thick scales protecting its body, Tianyang could only leave behind superficial scratches on its body. I don't need to kill it in several strikes. Not that I am even capable of such a feat with my pathetic strength. Instead, I will bleed it to death. With his plan solidified inside his mind, Tianyang would spend the next several hours dancing in the sky with the flying Leviathan, slowly leaving behind cuts that were just deep enough to make it bleed. As time passed, he became more adept at dodging the flying Leviathan's attacks with increased ease, allowing him to focus more on managing his spiritual energy usage, so that he doesn't exhaust himself before the flying Leviathan is dead. However, he got a little too comfortable when he saw how the flying Leviathan's body was soaked in its own blood, and he failed to dodge one of its attacks. When struck by the flying Leviathan's tail, Tianyang felt as though an entire mountain had been hurled at him, propelling him into the distance. Shit. Tianyang coughed up a mouthful of blood right before he smacked into the ocean, creating a powerful wave that spread in all directions. He could tell that his entire left arm was broken, as well as the left side of his ribs. I need to get out of the water. He could see the flying Leviathan charging at him with its mouth wide open. After emerging from the water, Tianyang reached for his spatial ring, only to realize at that moment that it had disappeared from his finger. Did I drop it? Forced to use his own spiritual energy to recover from his injuries, Tianyang stopped attacking and consumed half of his remaining spiritual energy to recover just enough to make the pain endurable. Die already, you damn fish! Tianyang roared as he relentlessly swung his sword at the flying Leviathan like a madman despite the agonizing pain in his body with each swing. After another hour of struggle, the flying Leviathan finally closed its eyes and fell from the sky. Fuck. I feel like dying as well. Just as he was on the verge of losing consciousness, Tianyang suddenly felt a burst of energy flow into his body, causing his cultivation to immediately break through to the 6th level Spirit Lord. What an amazing feeling, Tianyang thought to himself as he opened his eyes. Ha! I am back at the altar? When he opened his eyes, he could see the stone altar in front of him, as well as the other cultivators. A familiar voice resounded in his head, and an object materialized out of thin air, and landed on his lap the following moment. This is. He couldn't believe what was sitting on his lap. Golden ginseng roots. I have only read about these in scrolls. The golden ginseng roots could not only cleanse his body of impurities, it also contained a large amount of spiritual energy. He looked around to see if anyone saw the treasure. Seeing that everyone had their eyes closed, seemingly in their own trial, Tianyang immediately tossed the golden ginseng roots into his mouth and began chewing. Every time he chewed on the roots, an outburst of rich spiritual energy would surge from the medicine. Moreover, it cleansed a large amount of impurities from his body. After consuming the treasure, Tianyang closed his eyes and began cultivating. His cultivation that had just reached the 6th level Spirit Lord began to soar again, quickly approaching the 7th level, then the 8th level, only stopping once he was on the verge of entering the 9th level. Tianyang opened his eyes with a look of disbelief on his face. He's never experienced anything remotely close to what had just experienced. None of the treasures had purchased or found before could compare to the golden ginseng roots. On Zexian's tomb. What an amazing place. I definitely won't leave until I reach peak Spirit King. He turned to look at Kulas, who was sitting beside him. Now that I think about it, how long did it take me to finish the trial? He wondered. Suddenly, someone nearby collapsed on the ground with blood flowing from his eyes and nose. What the hell just happened? Startled, Tianyang stared at the person who'd just collapsed. I don't sense any heartbeat. He's dead. Then, the corpse began disintegrating, quickly disappearing into thin air. What the? Where did the corpse go? Tianyang was left speechless by what had just witnessed. C1372 4 Types of Trials. Chapter 1372 4 Types of Trials. 1372 4 Types of Trials. About an hour after Tianyang finished his trial, Kulas opened his eyes, and a treasure materialized on his lap a moment later. You finished already? Kulas looked at Tianyang with a surprised look on his face. He started the trial about 10 minutes after Tianyang did, yet had somehow finished later. Yes, Tianyang nodded, glancing at Kulas with a calm expression. How long ago? About an hour, I guess. Impressive. And what kind of trial did you undergo? Kulas continued asking. I had to fight a flying Leviathan. So not everyone receives the same trial. How interesting. Suddenly, another person there abruptly coughed up a mouthful of blood before collapsing on the ground, startling Kulas. What the? Tianyang calmly looked at the person who'd just collapsed and said, he died. What? Kulas looked at him with wide eyes. I've seen this happen several times since I finished my trial. My guess is that those who die during their trial will die with their real body as well, he said. That's quite cruel. But considering how precious the rewards are, I'm not too surprised. Kulas muttered as he watched the body disappear into thin air. I don't know why that happens. Tianyang said, referring to the disappearing body. It was probably absorbed by the tomb as nourishment, said Kulas. Nourishment? You make it sound as if the tomb is alive. Sort of. While it's not actually alive, it still requires a massive amount of spiritual energy to operate, so it'll take whatever it can get. Kulas hypothesized. Anyways, here you go. Kulas suddenly extended his hands toward Tianyang. What are you doing? Tianyang looked at him with wide eyes, seemingly in disbelief. What does it look like? I'm giving you my treasure since I don't need it. You can't be serious. Tianyang refused to believe that someone as generous as Kulas existed in their world. Even if it won't affect your cultivation, it will improve other areas. Kulas shrugged. I know my body better than anyone. Even if I consume 100 of these, it won't affect me. And since I cannot bring these treasures out of the tomb, I might as well give them to you to speed up your cultivation. In that case, thank you. Tianyang eventually accepted the treasure, feeling a little apprehensive. Kulas was being so generous that it was actually suspicious. After all, Tianyang was used to having things taken away from him more than receiving them. Go ahead and eat it. I'll watch over you just in case, Kulas said a moment later. Okay. Tianyang sat in the lotus position again and stared at the treasure in his grasp for a moment, feeling as though he was in a dream. The treasure Kulas received from his trial was different from his golden ginseng roots. It was a valuable treasure known as the Red Dragon's Muscle, a potent medicine for boosting one's muscles and overall physique. Of course, it wasn't any less valuable than the golden ginseng roots. After consuming the Red Dragon's Muscle, Tianyang could immediately feel his muscles squirming around inside his body, almost as though they gained their own consciousness. He could feel his muscles expanding and contrasting constantly, as if someone was massaging it. The experience was painful at first, but it gradually became more comfortable. Soon, his cultivation began to soar once again, entering 9th level Spirit Lord in the blink of an eye. Sometime later, Tianyang opened his eyes and stood up, feeling the prowess of a 1st level Spirit King coursing through his entire being. It hasn't even been a day since we entered the tomb, and I've gone from the 5th level Spirit Lord to 1st level Spirit King. This speed of progress is unfathomable for someone as talentless as me. He looked at the clear sky and sighed in a low voice. Zexian, huh? I'll worship you until the day I die for giving me this opportunity. Shall we continue to the next trial? Tianyang looked at Kulas, who nodded with an excited smile. They left the stone altar shortly after, and began wandering the tomb. Several thousands of miles and many hours later, they arrived before another altar. However, the altar had a different appearance compared to the previous altar. Instead of stone, it appeared to be made out of silver. Moreover, There were far less people taking the trial. As they approached the altar, someone standing outside the trial zone said to them, "I hope you know what you're getting yourself into." Tianyang halted his steps and looked at the middle-aged woman with a puzzled expression. "Judging by your reaction, is this your first trial?" she asked. "No, this would be our second." "Then in case you didn't know, not all trials in the tomb are equal. Some are much harder than others." Tianyang looked at the altar and asked, "Does it have anything to do with the altar's appearance?" "Correct. There are 4 types of altars. Starting from the easiest trials, stone altar, silver altar, gold altar, and jade altar. Naturally, the more difficult the trial, the better the rewards. With that being said, about 70% of the people that took this trial have died thus far. 70% casualty rate." Tianyang swallowed nervously. He wasn't sure about the casualty rate for the stone altar, but had witnessed 16 people die in just a few minutes. "Thank you for the information." After thanking the woman, Tianyang entered the zone and sat before the altar without the slightest hesitation on his face. Kulas followed him shortly after with a slight smile. The woman stared at them with wide eyes. Young and foolish. What a pity. Without saying anything else, she continued waiting outside the zone, seemingly waiting for someone or something. After mentally preparing himself and taking a deep breath, Tianyang closed his eyes and muttered, "Begin trial." C1373 Fish Pond. Chapter 1373 Fish Pond. 1373 Fish Pond. Tianyang opened his eyes a moment after he began the trial, finding himself surrounded by trees, and there was a large pond beside him. This is... He didn't immediately recognize his location, but once he did, his eyes widened with surprise. "This is the fish pond located near my village. The villagers come here often to fish. But why is the trial taking place here?" The village was his hometown, and where he spent most of his life until he became a disciple of the Immortal monastery. It took him a moment to recognize the place, not because it'd been a long time since he went there, but because it was a place filled with bad memories, a place he wanted to forget about. Suddenly, Tianyang sensed a presence appear above him, causing him to look at the sky. His eyes widened with shock after seeing the individual hovering above the pond. Once he snapped out of his daze, Tianyang's eyes flickered with anger and killing intent. "I don't know why you are part of the trial, but I welcome it." Tianyang could hardly control his emotions after seeing the face of the cultivator, who killed his mother and sister for the first time since the incident. When he was little, he would often visit the fish pond with his mother and sister. On one of these trips, they encountered 2 cultivators, both of them engaged in a fierce fight. Tianyang and his family immediately ran away, but alas, they were unable to outrun the techniques the cultivators were throwing at each other. Tianyang's mother and sister were instantly blown up by one of these techniques. As for Tianyang, had somehow managed to survive, but he was badly injured. "Defeat your opponent." The trial's voice resounded. Tianyang grinned. "I don't know your names, but I have imprinted your faces onto my soul. When I find you bastards, I will make you experience the feeling of losing your family, just like you'd made me suffer." One of the cultivators was a middle-aged man with long red hair and red eyes, while the other was an old man with long white hair and a short beard. The opponent before him was the cultivator with white hair. Tianyang didn't even bother to look at his opponent's cultivation before charging at him. The old man didn't even bat an eyelid and blocked Tianyang's strike with seemingly little to no effort at all. Tianyang didn't care in the slightest and continued to swing his arm relentlessly. Despite being adopted, his mother loved him unconditionally, and his sister treated him as though they were real brothers and sisters. Although he was only able to live with them for a few short years, they were everything to him during that time. "Because of you, they are dead." Tianyang's aura burned with rage as he unleashed the anger he'd been carrying since then. He became a cultivator solely because he wanted to avenge his family. He endured all the hardship and suffering for so many years just so he could one day pierce the hearts of his family's murderers. Ewa. Tianyang's anger burned with a different intensity compared to the pain he felt from losing Huang Xiaoli. and it propelled his prowess to heights that had never seen before. Unfortunately, he was too blinded by the anger to see it, and before he realized it, his opponent was kneeling on the ground beside the pond. Although it seemed like the old man had the advantage at first, he was unable to keep up with Tianyang, who only grew fiercer with each passing moment. Is this it? Tianyang calmly stared at the old man before him, feeling no sense of pride or accomplishment despite defeating the person who killed his family. In the end, you are nothing but a fake. Until I find the real you and kill you, I will never truly be at peace. Tianyang's expression became even more determined than the time when he first vowed to become a cultivator to avenge his family. Whoosh! With one more arm flick, Tianyang severed the old man's head, completing the trial. Tianyang immediately sensed a surge of spiritual energy flowing from the old man's corpse into his body, propelling his cultivation to second-level Spirit King. Even though the difficulty of this trial was much more difficult than his last, he was barely injured the entire fight, even clearing the trial much faster. Moreover, as his mind began to clear up, he could sense a certain connection with his sword. This sensation. Did I somehow manage to grasp the understanding of sword aura during the trial? He wondered to himself. What nonsense am I thinking? There's no way I would comprehend sword aura, with my level of talents. But he quickly disregarded that idea. After all, sword aura was a relatively new discovery during his era, and not something that could be grasped by a talentless Spirit King like him. Even peak geniuses with the sword require hundreds if not thousands of years of rigorous training to begin understanding sword aura, much less learn it. Once Tianyang returned to the tomb, another treasure appeared before him. This is a divine unity elixir. A single drop of this could improve one's talent and level of comprehension. And I have a whole bottle of it in my hands. This treasure is 10 times more valuable than the golden ginseng roots. Tianyang couldn't believe his eyes. Had only gone up a single level of difficulty, yet the reward was 10 times more valuable. Without any hesitation, Tianyang chugged the entire bottle of divine unity elixir. Although his cultivation did not increase, he could feel something changing within his body, fundamentally. When he opened his eyes several hours later, Tianyang felt as though had just experienced rebirth. I can do it. If I survive this place, I will be able to avenge my family. No, I will survive. Tianyang's eyes flickered with unfathomable determination. C1374 Colossal Background. Chapter 1374 Colossal Background. 1374 Colossal Background. Your aura feels quite different now. Kulas' voice resounded shortly after Tianyang emerged from his cultivation. Tianyang turned to look at Kulas, who was sitting beside him. How long have I been cultivating? He asked. I'm not sure since you started before I completed the trial, but I only waited 2 hours. Kulas shrugged. Here you go. Kulas didn't even bother offering his treasure, and directly tossed it at Tianyang, treating it as though it was trash. Seeing the treasure being tossed gave Tianyang a scare. What are you doing to such a precious treasure? Are you insane? He hastily caught the treasure. Kulas merely chuckled at his reaction. I'll count properly this time, he then said. Thanks. Tianyang quickly consumed the treasure, and his cultivation soared to 3rd-level Spirit King. That only took you 6 hours, Kulas said sometime later. I cannot get enough of this feeling. Tianyang mumbled as he stared at his palms, his entire being surging with spiritual energy. On to the next trial? Kulas asked. Of course. They left the place shortly after, and began searching for the next trial. Over the next several months, Tianyang and Kulas would go from trial to trial without rest. In the span of 8 months, Tianyang had managed to clear a dozen trials, 8 of them being stone altars and 3 of them being silver altars. The latest trial he cleared was a gold altar, which nearly took his life. Every single trial had something to do with his past. Eventually, Tianyang realized that the trials were all making him fight against his heart demon, something that had traumatized him to a certain extent. Every time he cleared a trial, Tianyang noticed that his shoulders would feel a little lighter, almost as though an invisible weight were being lifted. Not only did these trials boost his cultivation, but they also cleared his mind and eased his heart demons. Tianyang's cultivation soared all the way to 8th level Spirit King, after completing the Gold Altar's trial. You're only a level away from the peak of Spirit King. Kulas smiled. Tianyang nodded. Once I reach 9th level Spirit King, we will be able to explore the rest of the tomb. Due to how massive the tomb was, finding the trials was a challenge itself. Furthermore, since nobody had a map, they were forced to wander randomly until they found a trial. The longest it took them to find one trial was almost an entire month. As Tianyang and Kulas traveled, Tianyang suddenly asked, I've been wondering for a while now, but what kind of background do you come from? Since you're willing to give up so many treasures that normal people would kill for, it's safe to assume that you come from a wealthy family, right? You're asking me that now? Kulas had a slight smile on his face. Even though they've traveled together for almost a year now, neither of them tried to ask the other any personal questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Kulas pondered for a moment and said, I'll tell you if you tell me about your background first. Tianyang casually nodded without any hesitation. I was abandoned shortly after birth, so I don't know my birth parents. I was adopted by a single mother who already had a daughter who was a year younger than me. We resided in a small village. My family died when I turned 8, and I have been living alone since then. I joined the Immortal Monastery when I turned 16, and that's where I have been ever since. You grew up in a village? I didn't expect that. Kulas looked at him with a surprised face. Where did you think I was from? Tianyang raised an eyebrow. Not sure, but definitely not a village. Perhaps a hard-working family in some city. You don't look like someone who grew up in a village. I'll take that as a compliment. Tianyang shook his head. Now tell me about your background. All right. Kulas nodded. What's with the serious expression? Tianyang wondered to himself when he noticed Kulas' change in expression. To be completely honest with you, I came from. Right as Kulas opened his mouth, he was interrupted by a voice that Tianyang did not recognize. Look at what we have here. If it isn't Kulas. Tianyang and Kulas halted their movements and turned to look in the direction of the voice. Not far away, a group of 5 individuals were slowly approaching them. Tianyang did not recognize their faces, but he immediately recognized the uniforms they were wearing. They belonged to the Immortal clans. Tianyang gritted his teeth as he quickly tried to control his emotions. Even though it had almost been a year since he encountered the Immortal clans, he immediately recognized their uniform. What do you guys want? Kulas asked them with a slight frown on his face. Nothing really. But I'm curious. Shouldn't you be in the second section? What are you doing here in the first section with some nobody? The person leading the group asked as he glanced at Tianyang. I am merely accompanying a friend, but I don't see how that is any of your business. Kulas responded with a cold expression, something Tianyang was not used to seeing. In fact, this was Tianyang's first time seeing Kulas acting so seriously. A friend? You and this nobody? Are you serious? The group of 5 turned to look at Tianyang with widened eyes, seemingly filled with disbelief. Watch your mouth, Gulim. I will not let you badmouth my friend in my presence. Kulas narrowed his eyes. The person in the front, Gulim, laughed out loud. That serious Kulas actually befriended a talentless trash that's not even a spirit emperor. That's hilarious. I wonder how the others will react once they learn of this shocking news. Chapter 1375 Kulas Background 2. Chapter 1375 Kulas Background 2. 1375 Kulas Background 2. How dare you? Kulas' aura suddenly exploded when Gulim called Tianyang a talentless trash, his gaze filled with killing intent. Are you sure you want to fight the 5 of us by yourself over trash like that? In case you forgot, we're all limited to peak Spirit King. Even you wouldn't be able to defeat us with such a restriction. Gulim spoke with an arrogant grin on his face. We want no until. Tianyang interrupted Kulas by placing a hand on his shoulder. It's fine, he shook his head. But they're not wrong. I am talentless, so there's no need to fight over it. Ahaha. At least this trash knows his place. The group laughed out loud. Kulas could feel Tianyang's grip on his shoulder strengthen. Seeing this, Kulas closed his eyes and took a deep breath, easing his anger. Are you finished? If so, we'll be leaving now, Kulas said a moment later. What's the rush? Since we haven't seen each other for so long, why don't we chat a little longer? Gulim said. I have nothing to say to you. If you have so much free time, why don't you spend it looking for Han Zexian's legacy instead of wasting it here? Kulas sneered. Han Zexian's legacy? We've been looking for 8 months straight without any result, so we're taking a small break for the time being. What about you? What have you been doing for the past several months? Seeing how he's in the first section, he's probably doing trials. What a waste of time. Right? It's not like the rewards will even benefit him. Hey, didn't we just pass a Jade altar? Why don't you try it, Kulas? I heard it's the hardest trial available in this place. Tianyang's eyes flickered with a profound light after hearing this information. The trial within the gold altar nearly killed me, but its reward was tremendously beneficial. If I can complete a Jade altar's trial. Kulas turned to look at Tianyang. And when he saw the look on Tianyang's face, he immediately smiled and said, sure. Seriously? You're going to do the trial? The group didn't think Kulas would actually agree to it. Nobody has ever passed the trial even though tens of thousands have attempted during the last 8 months. You're just going to walk into your own grave. Even if you are the genius of the Immortal Might clan. Immortal Might clan? Tianyang raised an eyebrow. Although he suspected that Kulas belonged to a powerful family from the beginning, he didn't think that it was part of the Immortal clans. Kulas looked at Tianyang with an apologetic smile, and spoke with divine sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to keep it from you. After learning of your situation, I just couldn't bring myself to tell you that I was from the Immortal clans. Tianyang shook his head and said, if I never asked you about your background, you had no reason to tell me, so there's no need to apologize. And it's not as though I have a grudge against everyone from the Immortal clans. Only those responsible for the confinement. I see, thank you. I didn't know you cared about my life, Kulas said to the group a moment later. Cocky bastard, let's see if you'll survive the trial. Gulim sneered. Tianyang and Kulas followed Gulim and his group to the Jade altar, which was only an hour away from their location. Upon arriving at their destination, Tianyang could see 3 people sitting around an altar made of jade with several hundred spectators. There are more spectators than there are challengers. This was Tianyang's first time seeing such a sight after witnessing a dozen different trials. By the time Tianyang and the others landed around the altar, one of the 3 challengers suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood before collapsing on the ground. Omicronim, nobody there expressed any surprise and continued to spectate the other 2 in silence. Tianyang looked at Kulas and said, you don't have to do this with me. Are you saying that because you don't want me to die with you, or you think you can pass it but I can't? Kulas asked with a slight frown. You have no reason to risk your life for this trial. What about the previous trials we've done together? This one is different. Nobody has ever completed it. Tianyang shook his head. Then why are you taking the trial? You can reach peak Spirit King if you just continue to do easier trials. Tianyang looked at the Jade altar and sighed. My talent may have improved a lot since I started doing the trial, but it is still insignificant when compared to the majority of people out there. I won't be able to achieve my dreams if I continue going the easy route. If I don't survive this trial, I am simply not fated for anything else. You're going to partake in the trial? A talentless trash like you? You won't even last a minute. Gu Lim and his group were in disbelief after learning this information. Tianyang smiled at the group and said, would you like to bet on that? That would be pointless since you'll die if I win. What can I possibly get out of a corpse? Gu Lim sneered. How about I make the bet then? Kulas suddenly said. Now that's more like it. Gu Lim smiled. What shall we bet on? Whether he lives or dies? Kulas nodded. I will bet on him surviving the trial. What are the stakes? Gu Lim then asked. Kulas pondered for a moment before speaking. I'll bet my ancestral gauntlet. Gu Lim's expression froze after hearing Kulas' words, and the people behind him looked dumbstruck. Are you serious? You're willing to bet on your favorite weapon for this talentless trash? Gu Lim held a serious expression as he asked for confirmation. Don't look down on my friend. You call him talentless, but there are many kinds of talents in this world. And his talent to survive is the best I've ever seen. Kulas nodded with a confident smile on his face. C1376 Jade Altar. Chapter 1376 Jade Altar. 1376 Jade Altar. Since I am betting my ancestral gauntlet, you should put something of similar value on the line. If you don't have anything like that, the 5 of you can work together to cover the difference. Kulas said to Gu Lim, who was gritting his teeth in anger. Gu Lim was not angry because Kulas was betting on Tianyang's survival. He was frustrated because he had nothing close to the value of Kulas' ancestral gauntlet. He turned to look at his 4 buddies and said, "Let's do it. There's no way that talentless trash will survive the Jade trial, so this will be an easy win for us. It's essentially free money." The 4 quickly nodded, agreeing to pool together their resources for the bet. None of them believed that Tianyang could survive the Jade Altar's trial, so there was no hesitation in their decision. Eventually, they gathered a small mountain of treasures for the bet. Tianyang's eyes widened with shock after seeing the difference. Kulas only had one item, a pair of gauntlets. However, Gu Lim and his group had at least 20 different treasures. Just how valuable is that gauntlet? And he's willing to bet it on me? Tianyang swallowed nervously. Fortunately for him, he wouldn't have to worry about the aftermath if he were to lose the trial, as he would be dead. However, he was still pressured by the knowledge that his death would lead to Kulas losing his precious treasure. "Hey, do you really have to bet on such a valuable treasure?" Tianyang asked Kulas with a stiff look on his face. Kulas responded with a smile. "The value of the treasure is how much trust one have in you, in your talent." Tianyang clenched his fists after hearing Kulas' words. He's never had anyone put so much faith in him before, much less someone with a status as profound as Kulas. If I had a sworn brother, is this what it would feel like? Tianyang wondered to himself. "Hey, trash bastard, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and die in the trial already." Gu Lim suddenly glared at Tianyang with clear disdain. Kulas narrowed his eyes, and he responded instead, "One more thing. If he survives the trial, you will take back all the bullshit you spewed and show some respect to my friend." Ha ha ha. If he survives, not only will I respect him, I will kowtow before him and call him my grandfather for the rest of my life. Gu Lim laughed so viciously that his eyes became teary. Hearing this, Kulas turned to look at Tianyang and nodded with a serious expression. "Good luck, friend." Tianyang nodded with a slight smile. "I will see you in a bit." Without hesitation, Tianyang walked towards the Jade Altar, where only one challenger remained by the time he reached it. Is he really going to challenge the trial with that level of cultivation base? There are better ways to court death. Who even is this guy? I recognized all the people that have challenged the trial, but I don't know him. I saw him talking with some people from the Immortal clans just now. Perhaps he's from there? The spectators were in disbelief when they saw Tianyang entering the trial area, especially after seeing his cultivation that was only at the 8th level Spirit King. Whoever claimed that he's from the Immortal clans, take that back right this instance. How could such talentless trash come from the Immortal clans? Are you mocking the Immortal clans? Gu Lim suddenly spoke loudly, alerting all of the spectators. He's not from the Immortal clans? Then he must be a nobody. His arrogance is too much for a nobody. How dare he even approach the Jade Altar? Does he think he's better than everyone who's come before him? Hearing so many people badmouth Tianyang, Kulas lost his control and roared. "The next person to badmouth my friend will die by my hands." The spectators were startled by Kulas' killing intent, and when they recognized his identity, they immediately stopped talking out loud. Holy shit! Isn't that young Master Kulas from the Immortal Might clan? Did he just call that man his friend? Kulas! He's known for being a brutal and cold person. That man must be very impressive to become such a person's friend. Tianyang had just closed his eyes when he heard Kulas' loud voice. He smiled inwardly. "Thank you, my friend." Begin trial, he muttered the following moment. As Tianyang began his trial, Gu Lim turned to look at Kulas and asked with a serious expression, I seriously don't get it. Why did you befriend someone like him? He's just a nobody. Kulas looked at him and responded in a calm voice. If you'd been there when I first met him, you would feel nothing but respect and admiration for him. Have you ever seen someone desperately hold on to their life? I have many times. However, none of them were able to move me the same way he did. Have you ever experienced a life or death situation? I have dozens of times. However, compared to what he's experienced, my experience might as well be a drop in the ocean. He's someone who lives at the border between life and death. An existence that should have long perished with his level of talent. Despite that, he's managed to survive. How does he do it? I want to know. And how can I not respect someone like that? Compared to you bastards who flaunt their talents at every step, he's unfathomably more interesting. Gu Lim and his friends were at a loss for words after hearing Kulas speak about Tianyang. They've known Kulas for nearly most of their lives, but they have never seen him acting in such a manner before, much less praise someone. Kulas stopped looking at Gu Lim and quickly glanced at the crowd before sneering in disdain. Even I don't have the qualifications to mock him, much less these cowardly bastards here. Chapter 1377 Jade Altar 2. Chapter 1377 Jade Altar 2. 1377 Jade Altar 2. When Tianyang opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by trees. Although he didn't immediately recognize his location, his face still made a deep frown, almost as if he subconsciously knew. This place is. Just as Tianyang realized his location, he sensed over 100 presence with immense killing intent suddenly appearing around him, sending shivers down his entire being. Before he could even react, a dozen figures wearing rough clothes jumped out of thin air and swung their weapons at him. Tianyang had started moving even before the figures appeared, allowing him to dodge their attacks. After distancing himself from them, Tianyang took a brief moment to look at these figures' faces, and sure enough, he immediately recognized them to be the gold and money bandits. I knew I would eventually have to face this heart demon of mine in one of these trials. Tianyang sighed. Even though had mentally prepared himself for months, he was already on the verge of being consumed by rage. The only thing that kept him from charging at these bandits was because of their cultivation bases. All of the bandits had a peak Spirit King cultivation base, including those hiding out of sight. After consuming many valuable treasures, Tianyang's talent increased tremendously, to the point where he could fight several ordinary peak Spirit Kings as an 8th level Spirit King simultaneously. However, there were 100 peak Spirit Kings that surrounded him. Tianyang took a deep breath and calmed himself. The following moment, the bandits charged at him with their daggers and sabers raised, their expressions oozing with bloodlust. Tianyang gritted his teeth and tried his best to block the incoming attacks. He would successfully block several but also miss a few. Every time he confronted the bandits, a few more cuts would appear on his body. Fortunately, none of the attacks that connected were life-threatening, and were only shallow wounds. Unfortunately, Tianyang couldn't keep up with the relentless assault, and it was only a matter of time before one of the bandits landed a critical hit on him. Realizing this, Tianyang focused on fighting his heart demon instead. After doing so many trials, he noticed a certain thing with these trials. Since these trials tested their heart demons, the trials would get easier if the challenger weakened their heart demon during the trial. However, to defeat one's heart demon was much easier said than done. Even before this trial, Tianyang had been fighting this specific heart demon for months, but alas, he simply couldn't fight the guilt of losing Huang Xiaoli. If only I had been stronger. If only, his voice resounded inside his head, almost as if he was whispering to himself. Tianyang gritted his teeth and roared, "Shut the fuck up." His eyes flickered profoundly, and he continued, "I am no longer talentless." An immense aura suddenly surged from his body. "I will survive this damn trial and avenge Huang Xiaoli. I will survive and avenge my parents. I will survive and seek justice for Meng Lily. I will survive." Tianyang stopped being defensive and started looking for opportunities to attack. Since he was already having trouble defending against so many opponents at once, it would be even more difficult to attack without leaving himself wide open. Thus, he needed to make every strike count. Unless he was certain that his attack would land and kill his target, Tianyang continued to defend and avoid. Eventually, he noticed an opening. Without hesitation, he went for the kill. Sha! His sword flickered, sending one of the bandits' heads into the sky. However, immediately after killing one of the bandits, 6 of them attacked him from different angles. Omicron M. Tianyang knew that he wouldn't be able to dodge all of them, so he blocked the life-threatening strikes and allowed the less threatening to go through. However, shortly after Tianyang killed the first bandit, another one would jump out of the treelines to join the fight. Tianyang gritted his teeth and continued fighting. An hour later, Tianyang killed 20 bandits, but his condition was worse than ever. His body was riddled with holes and deep cuts, and his entire body was dripping with blood. At this rate, he would perish before killing even half of the bandits there. However, unbeknownst to Tianyang, he was slowly defeating his heart demon. After another hour, right as Tianyang killed his 50th bandit, one of the bandits plunged his dagger into his back. Enduring the reverberating agony coursing through his entire being, Tianyang clenched his teeth with unwavering determination and continued fighting. One would expect Tianyang to slow down as his body continued to weaken, but his movements and attacks only grew fiercer as time passed. 125, 1020. It only took Tianyang half an hour to slaughter 20 bandits this time. Meanwhile, at the Jade altar, Tianyang's real body suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Kulas clenched his fists after seeing this. Ha ha! We won the bet! Gu Lim started celebrating after seeing this. Shut up! He's not dead yet! Kulas exclaimed. Sure enough, Tianyang merely coughed up blood and didn't collapse. Gu Lim sneered. So what? It's only a matter of time before he dies. And he continued, though, I will give him some credit for lasting longer than the other challengers. Most challengers would perish a few minutes after starting the trial, yet Tianyang had managed to survive 3 hours and counting. In fact, Gu Lim and his group were getting nervous because they had expected Tianyang to die within a minute of starting his trial. Of course, all of that anxiety disappeared when they saw Tianyang cough up blood, which was a sign that he was at his limit and on the verge of death. You can do it! Kulas stared at Tianyang's figure with a profound expression. C1378 God's Fruit. Chapter 1378 God's Fruit. 1378 God's Fruit. Ha, ha. Tianyang gasped for air as he fell to his knee after his 99th bandit, his body soaked in blood. There were 3 daggers stabbed into his back and a sword skewering his right leg. Moreover, his entire left arm has been missing since it was severed half an hour ago. Of the countless life or death situations he had faced, this trial marked his closest brush with death yet. And he still had one opponent left to fight. Tianyang stared at his final opponent with one eye closed, his gaze filled with anger and hatred. The last bandit that stood between him and victory was the leader of the gold and money bandits. You. Tianyang gritted his teeth and pulled out the sword stuck in his leg, enduring the pain. I will kill you. Even though his opponent was only a peak spirit king, Tianyang was already on the verge of exhausting what little spiritual energy he had left. However, almost as though the heavens finally acknowledged Tianyang's struggles and decided to bless him for the first time in his lifetime, his 8th level Spirit King cultivation that was already a hair's width away from breakthrough suddenly entered the 9th level Spirit King. His exhausted spiritual energy replenished a decent amount, allowing him to recover some of his injuries with enough to spare for the fight. Hiya! Tianyang released a war cry before charging at the bandit leader. Immense killing intent spewed out of Tianyang's eyes as he swung at his opponent relentlessly. After spending several hours physically fighting his heart demon, he arrived at the point where it hardly affected him any longer. The bandit leader was only a little stronger than the other bandits, but it was more than doable for Tianyang, who had a slight upgrade. Tianyang did not immediately kill the bandit leader. and decided to slowly kill him instead. He knew that the bandit leader wasn't real, so it was purely to release built-up stress. He severed the bandit leader's limbs one by one, starting with the arms before moving to the legs. When the bandit leader could no longer move, let alone stand, Tianyang covered his body with superficial cuts, almost as though he was trying to bleed the bandit leader to death. By the time Tianyang was done, there was not an area on the bandit leader's body and face where it did not have a sword cut. The voice returned when the bandit leader finally perished. Ah, I really did it. Tianyang rested his eyes. When he opened them again, the view of shocked spectators appeared before his eyes. All of them had either wide eyes or wide mouths, or both. You have acquired the qualifications to seek my legacy. A familiar voice that only Tianyang could hear entered his head, followed by information about the legacy's location. However, Tianyang couldn't care less about the legacy, as he was focused on the treasure that appeared before him for clearing the Jade altar's trial. Unbelievably, it was God's fruit, also known as the god of all cultivation medicine. It was an exceedingly rare and valuable treasure that could completely reconstruct a person's innate talent to make it as high as possible. It was a heaven-defying and godlike medicine that had only appeared in the world once before since the beginning of time. However, even though God's fruit could boost one's talent to its maximum potential, everyone has a different limit. For example, Tianyang was born with no talents and could only reach the peak of Spirit Lord. However, after consuming God's fruit and unlocking his maximum innate talent, it allowed him to reach the 9th level of Spirit King. Meanwhile, Kulas was born with enough talents to reach the peak of Spirit Lord, but after consuming God's fruit, he would be able to reach the peak of Spirit Sovereign, thus having a higher limit than Tianyang. God's fruit. He's acquired a God's fruit. The spectators snapped out of their daze when they saw the treasure in Tianyang's hands, their eyes shining with greed. Forget about these ordinary cultivators. Even the immortal clans would start a war to acquire God's fruit. Suddenly, someone jumped out of the crowd and charged at Tianyang with clear killing intent. However, before he could even reach Tianyang, an invisible force with unfathomable prowess appeared out of thin air to neutralize the threat, instantly turning the person who charged at Tianyang into a cloud of blood mist. Anyone who dares to steal another's treasure will be removed from existence. The trial's voice resounded loud enough for everyone to hear. Tianyang, hurry up and consume it. Kulas suddenly shouted at him. Wait. Don't eat it. I will buy the god's fruit from you. Gulim immediately said. He continued. That god's fruit will only be wasted on someone like you. If you know what's for you, sell it to me. Tianyang turned to look at Gulim and sneered. Before that, there is something else that you must do. What is it? If I recall correctly, you made a bet with Kulas on whether he'll survive this trial or not. Tianyang narrowed his eyes and continued. We can talk about the god's fruit after you honor your bet. Hearing this, Gulim gritted his teeth and handed all of the treasures he and his group bet on to Kulas. There. Now sell me the god's fruit, Gulim said afterward. How much are you willing to buy it for? Tianyang asked. 100 million spirit stones. Gulim shouted. Tianyang sneered in disdain after hearing the offer, and he said, the last god's fruit was sold for 1 billion spirit stones. Why would I sell mine for any less? Gulim clenched his fists and roared. You can't even bring that god's fruit out of this place. So what? That doesn't affect the god's fruit's effects, which means it won't be any less valuable, whether I can take it out of here or not. Tianyang shrugged. If you won't buy it at an appropriate price, I'd rather use it for myself. Naturally, he had no intentions of selling the god's fruit even if it killed him, so he was only messing with Gulim as a way of taking revenge for treating him like trash. However, Gulim didn't know this and thought he actually had a chance to acquire the god's fruit. C1379 Consuming God's Fruit. Chapter 1379 Consuming God's Fruit. 1379 Consuming God's Fruit. 3 No. 500 million spirit stones. This is my final offer. Although I cannot pay you now, I will definitely pay you once we get out. Gu Lim gritted his teeth and gave Tianyang his new offer. Tianyang did not immediately answer, and closed his eyes to ponder, or pretend to think about Gu Lim's offer. Seeing Tianyang's hesitation, Gu Lim tried to convince him further. You can purchase countless powerful treasures with that much money, even 1 or 2 mythic-grade treasures with ease. However, if you refuse, just know that you'll become my Immortal Gu clan's enemy. Tianyang opened his eyes a moment later and wore a gentle smile on his face. I understand, he said in a calm voice. Gu Lim immediately smiled back. I take back what I said about you. However, before Gu Lim could even finish his sentence, Tianyang opened his mouth and shoved the god's fruit into his mouth, consuming it with a single bite. Gu Lim couldn't believe his eyes, his face filled with shock and disbelief. When he realized what had just occurred, his entire being trembled in anger, and his face flushed with redness, looking like a demon. You son of a bitch! How dare you mock me? Tianyang sneered at Gu Lim and spoke in a disdainful voice. Humph! You want me to hand over the god's fruit without payment, and you expect me to wait until we leave this place for my payment? You want me to trust you, who cannot even fulfill his own promises. Laughable. I already gave Kulas all the treasures we bet on. What more do you want me from? Gu Lim shouted, spewing saliva everywhere. Kulas interrupted. If I recall correctly, you promised to kowtow before him and call him grandfather for the rest of his life if he survived the trial. Yet I have not seen you on your knees, much less call him grandfather. Kulas, you fucking bastard. If you think I won't beat you up because you're from a fellow Immortal clan, you have made a huge mistake. Gu Lim pointed at Kulas, his entire arm shaking uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Tianyang felt a strange shift happening in his body. After eating the god's fruit, it was as if something had loosened up inside him, like unclogging a drain that had been blocked for decades. His body felt weightless, as though gravity no longer affected him, and all of his senses became more sensitive and keen, allowing him to notice even the smallest details. Furthermore, he could feel his strength skyrocketing even though there were no changes to his cultivation base. This is me, at my highest potential? My body feels foreign, as if it doesn't belong to me. Tianyang looked at his palms with a nervous smile on his face. You trash bastard. I dare you to step outside the safe zone and fight me. Gu Lim suddenly shouted as he stared at Tianyang with immense killing intent surging within his eyes. Tianyang narrowed his gaze at Gu Lim. Although he was never intimidated by Gu Lim even before consuming the god's fruit, now that he's essentially experienced a rebirth, he could tell that Gu Lim posed zero threat to him. Thus, Tianyang confidentially started walking towards Gu Lim. Seeing Tianyang's resolute expression, Kulas prepared to fight alongside him. The moment Tianyang stepped outside the safe zone, Gu Lim wasted no time jumping at him. Die, you insignificant bastard. So what if you consumed the god's fruit? You are still no different than trash in my eyes. Gu Lim swung his ancient great sword at Tianyang. Tianyang only had an earth-grade sword on him, so he didn't dare to block Gu Lim's sword head-on, fearing that his earth-grade sword would break. Why don't you fight someone with proper equipment? Kulas suddenly appeared beside Gu Lim, kicking him away from Tianyang. When the 4 people following Gu Lim realized that a fight could no longer be avoided, they retrieved their divine-grade treasures and joined the battle. 2 of them went after Tianyang while the other 2 went to assist Gu Lim. Meanwhile, the spectators there quickly distanced themselves from the fight. None of them wanted to stick their nose in a fight between the Immortal clans, nor did they have the qualifications to join the battle after witnessing how fierce it was. You've made a huge mistake offending the Immortal Gu clan today, you mortal dog. Even if you manage to get out of this alive, the Immortal Gu clan will never forgive you. The 2 cultivators fighting Tianyang cursed at him as they fought. Does the Immortal clans only know how to bully the weak? How pathetic. Tianyang sneered in disgust. The 2 cultivators anticipated an easy victory since they were ganging up on a single person, but they were greatly surprised when they realized that not only were they unable to land a single strike on Tianyang, but he was actually pushing them back. Serenity Sword Strike. Radiant Saber. The 2 cultivators began employing their martial techniques, But Tianyang dodged them with ease using just the basic movement technique taught by the Immortal Monastery. Is this all the Immortal clans are capable of? If so, you're not so different than everyone else. Tianyang taunted them even further. Oh, cut that filthy mouth of yours and feed it to the dogs. Although Tianyang could have killed them at any time, he decided to use them as training, so that he could get used to his newfound strength. Once he was satisfied, Tianyang stopped messing around and exploded with strength. This caught his opponents off guard, and before they could even react, Tianyang extinguished one of their lives with a single sword technique. Immortal Rending Sword Strike. Tianyang's sword moved with such viciousness and power that his target's body was separated in half. When the other cultivator saw his friend being slaughtered in such a manner, he immediately lost all will to continue the fight and raised his hand while shouting, "W8. I give up." However, Tianyang acted as though he didn't hear anything and mercilessly swung his sword again. "You bah!" After killing his opponents, Tianyang turned to look at Kulas' situation. He was still fighting with Gulim, but the other two were nowhere to be seen, presumably dead. C1380 Darker Path. Chapter 1380 Darker Path, 1380 Darker Path. Kulas. Do you need my help? Tianyang asked him after his fight ended. Wah. What happened to Guyaju and Fulingshin? What did you do to them? Gulim roared at Tianyang when he couldn't see his friends around. Tianyang sneered. Isn't it obvious that I killed them? You bastard. Gulim suddenly stopped paying attention to Kulas and charged at Tianyang. We are not finished yet. Kulas immediately went to intercept him. Get out of my way, Kulas. Do you truly intend on fighting to the death with me? My family will not let this slide even if it's you. Gulim roared at him. Don't talk as if I started this. You were the one who approached us, provoked us. Don't you dare make it sound like you are the victim here, Gulim. Kulas shouted back, his strikes getting fiercer and quicker. Gulim began panicking at this point. He knew that he couldn't defeat Kulas alone. The sole reason for challenging Kulas in the first place had been the support of his group, but now, with them absent and dead, he found himself utterly helpless. As Kulas pushed Gulim further and further towards death, Gulim's desperation peaked. Stop it. This isn't funny, Kulas. If you kill me, my family will not forgive you. Are you going to be able to handle the consequences? Kulas halted his movements shortly after hearing Gulim's words. Sure enough, while he wouldn't have any problem dealing with Gulim's buddies, he couldn't directly kill Gulim himself, who was the young master of the Immortal Gu clan, as that could potentially lead to war between the Immortal Might clan and the Immortal Gu clan. That's right, Kulas. You cannot kill me unless you want our families to go to war. It was as though Gulim could read Kulas' mind, showing a relieved smile on his face. However, just as Gulim felt safe, he sensed a presence suddenly appear behind him like a ghost. Wah! Gulim turned around, but before he could fully turn around to see who was behind him, he sensed a cold sensation breeze past his neck. Kulas' eyes widened with shock when he witnessed Tianyang kill Gulim without hesitation. What have you done? He swallowed nervously. You couldn't kill him, right? In that case, I will do it for you. Tianyang said with a relatively calm expression on his face. Do you have any idea who you just killed? That was the young master of the Immortal Gu clan, their patriarch's favorite son. Once they learn of what happened here, they will hunt you down like a dog for the rest of your life. Tianyang shook his head and said, if I had let him live, he wouldn't let me scot-free, so it wouldn't have mattered if I killed him or not. They will hunt me down regardless, so I might as well take care of him now. Unable to refute Tianyang's logic, Kulas gritted his teeth. He looked at the shocked spectators and sighed. You could have at least waited until there's nobody to witness it, but now. Tianyang looked at the crowd and smiled. Even if I killed him out of sight, these people have already seen us argue and fight with him, so it would only be a matter of time before they realize I killed him. Don't worry, Kulas. You weren't the one who killed him, so you can pin all the blame onto me. With so many witnesses here, I doubt his family will go through the trouble of blaming you. I couldn't care less about that. Why don't we continue our conversation somewhere else? Tianyang suddenly said. Sure. However, before leaving the scene, Tianyang made sure to take Gu Lim's spatial ring, just as he did with the other two he defeated. Once they were gone, the crowd that witnessed Gu Lim's death went into an uproar. This is huge news. Gu Lim is dead. Fuck. I can already imagine the Immortal Gu clan's reaction once they learn of this news. Who the hell was that person anyway? I don't recognize him. Unsurprisingly, nobody there recognized Tianyang, so even if they were questioned about him later, they would only be able to give a description of Tianyang's appearance, and that he was Kulas' friend. Sometime later, Tianyang and Kulas stopped by a large boulder and continued their conversation. So, what are you going to do now? Kulas asked. Tianyang lifted his head to stare at the clear sky and sighed. I honestly don't know. I have managed to reach my full potential and finally acquired the talent that I could only dream of. But what good is my talent when I am going to be hunted by the Immortal clans? I must have somehow offended the heavens or something in my past life to have such terrible luck. Kulas pondered for a moment before speaking. How about joining my Immortal Might clan? We'll try to protect you from the Immortal Gu clan. Tianyang smiled and said, I appreciate the offer, truly. However, we both know that won't work. The Immortal Might clan has no reason to protect me and would rather give me up to spare them the trouble, especially since you are partially involved, and I doubt it'll just be the Immortal Gu clan that'll have to worry about. In fact, you should probably stay away from me starting now. It would be bad for you to associate with me any longer since it would give the Immortal Gu family more reasons to go after you. Cut the bullshit. The only reason you are in this situation is because of me. Gu Lim wouldn't have provoked you if you weren't with me. Kulas exclaimed. He clenched his fists in anger until they bled, muttering in a shivering voice, What's the point of saving your life if I just lead you down an even darker path later? I'm such a terrible friend. C1381 Red Altar. Chapter 1381 Red Altar 1381 Red Altar. Enough, Kulas. I am glad that you saved my life. What happened to Gu Lim wasn't your fault. It's Gu Lim's own fault for picking the fight, as well as mine for ending his life. Tianyang said with a calm smile on his face, almost as though had already accepted his fate. Anyways, if you don't intend on leaving me alone, should we start making our way to the second section? Kulas nodded. So we'll finally start exploring the tomb for real now, huh? Do you know where to start? He shook his head. Nope. No clue. I guess we can just wander around like we did for the trials and hope for the best. Alright, but unlike the first section, there will be magical beasts and countless dangerous traps awaiting us. We have to move around with care. Tianyang nodded. That's obvious. He looked around and asked, By the way, which direction is the second section in? Kulas shrugged and said, No clue, but we can ask around. The two of them continued to wander until they came across someone. Excuse me, do you know where the second section is located? Kulas asked. Do you see that mountain over there? Keep moving in that direction until you see a red-colored altar. That will teleport you to the second section of the tomb. Thank you very much. Now with a new destination, Tianyang and Kulas followed the mountain's direction. 1 day, 2 days, 4 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, Tianyang and Kulas traveled for nearly an entire month before they reached their destination. They stopped before a red altar, located at what seemed like the edge of the world. How do we activate this? Kulas inspected the red altar. Activate. Tianyang muttered out loud. Activate teleport. I guess not. Tianyang shook his head. What are you idiots doing? A clear voice suddenly resounded behind them. What? Tianyang turned around with a slightly surprised look on his face, as he couldn't feel their presence until just now. Not far away, a group of young ladies were approaching his direction. There were 4 of them, each being a world-class beauty that could topple kingdoms with their appearance alone. Kulas frowned when he saw these ladies, almost as if he recognized them. If it isn't Kulas. What a surprise. You had me believe that you didn't come to this place when I didn't see you at the beginning. The lady leading the group spoke when she saw Kulas. The group of ladies ignored Tianyang, walking right past him before stopping in front of Kulas. Where have you been? That is none of your business, Ren Xia. Kulas sneered with a hint of disgust within his tone. Of course it is. We are engaged to each other, after all. The lady named Ren Xia said with a slight smile on her face. Humph. What an unfunny joke, acting like you actually care about that. What's that supposed to mean? In case you forgot, you were the first one to express your disapproval of our engagement. Tianyang watched their interaction with interest. He didn't know Kulas was engaged. Now that I think about it, he's from a prominent background. It would be weird if he wasn't engaged. If you're here to bother me, I won't entertain you, Kulas said with a slight frown. Ren Xia shifted her gaze from Kulas to the red altar beside him and spoke. Are you trying to activate the portal? Are you having trouble? Do you need me to help you? I'll help you if you ask me nicely. In your dreams, you annoying bitch. Kulas sneered in disgust. Ren Xia immediately frowned and said, as rude as ever, I see. If our parents had been here to hear that, you would have received a serious spanking. But since you refused my help, I would like to see how you'll activate it. Ren Xia turned to look at the ladies behind her and continued, ladies, let us take a break here. We might even see some funny things in just a bit. Che. Kulas ignored them and walked to Tianyang. Just act like they don't even exist. Is it really okay to treat your fiancé in such a manner? Tianyang asked with a raised eyebrow. Don't let her appearance fool you. She's a sadistic and narcissistic bitch. And it was our family's decision to engage us. Kulas whispered to him. I can hear you, you know. Ren Xia said. By the way, who is that? A friend? No way, right? Even as Ren Xia voiced her disbelief, she couldn't fathom the idea of Kulas having a friend. Nevertheless, the truth remained that she had never witnessed him display such friendliness towards anyone else. So what if he's a friend? Kulas did not refute her, even confirming it. Seriously? A look of disbelief appeared on Ren Xia's face, as she didn't expect Kulas to admit it. I've been meaning to ask you this for a while now, but why is everyone so surprised when they find out you have a friend? Tianyang couldn't help but pose the question. A stiff smile appeared on Kulas' face as he responded. Probably because I tend to push everyone away in the past. What do you mean in the past? You've done it your entire life. You always have this hard-to-approach aura around you, and you would immediately shoo away anyone that tries to get close to you. Ren Xia sneered after hearing his words. Hard to approach? Tianyang found that hard to believe. His first impression of Kulas was anything but distant. In fact, Kulas seemed overly friendly during their initial meeting, almost suspiciously so. Kulas blushed and said, I only act like that towards those unworthy of my respect. It just turns out that everyone around me is unworthy, until I met you. Him? Worthy of your respect? Did you hit your head somewhere? Ren Xia had a dumbfounded look on her face as she asked him. Kulas narrowed his gaze at her and responded in a cold tone. Since you are my fiancé, allow me to give you a warning. The consequences of underestimating my friend are severe. Gu Lim learned that the hard way and paid with his life. What? Gu Lim is dead. Ren Xia's expression turned pale after learning of this information. C1382 Kulas Fiancé. Chapter 1382 Kulas Fiancé 1382 Kulas Fiancé K Kulas. You crazy son of a bitch. Don't tell me you killed Gu Lim. Do you have any idea what you have done? Ren Xiao exclaimed with a look of disbelief on her face. The others behind her also covered their mouths from shock. However, Tianyang responded in Kulas' stead. No, he didn't kill Gu Lim. I was the one who killed him. What? You? Ren Xia shifted her gaze to Tianyang. She glared at him with a deep frown and asked, Who are you? Tianyang calmly responded with a smile on his face. I'm a nobody. Regardless of your identity, are you aware of the consequences of your actions? Gu Lim's family will stop at nothing to hunt you down. No, it won't just be his family. The other immortal clans will also get involved. So what? The smile on Tianyang's face suddenly flipped, and a cold expression appeared on his face. I already have a bone to pick with the immortal clans. If they weren't going to hunt me, I would have gone after them myself. Ren Xiao's eyes widened with surprise after hearing his words. A mysterious smile appeared on her face, causing her beauty to blossom even further, and she spoke in a low voice. Not only are you not fearful of the immortal clans, but you even dare to go against them. What an interesting man. When Qual saw the look on Ren Xiao's face, his entire being trembled, and he quickly stood between them. Whatever you are planning, give it up, he said to her. And what makes you think that I am planning something? You always make that annoying expression when you're planning something. Don't act like you are familiar with me. Tianyang shook his head and interrupted them. While you two argue, I'll try to figure out how to activate the altar. He ignored them and walked to the altar. Even if you don't help us, someone who knows how to operate it will eventually come, Kulas said to Ren Xia. Ren Xia chuckled. I can't believe you're struggling to activate the teleportation array. What? It's an array? Kulas' eyes widened. Ren Xia covered her mouth and acted like she accidentally spilled the beans. Oh my, I accidentally gave you the answer. Though, it's not like you can do anything about it since you aren't an array master. However, Tianyang raised an eyebrow when he heard it. Array? He inspected the red altar in finer detail, and sure enough, he could see array symbols engraved all over the altar. These are only level 1 array symbols. In that case, a few moments later, Tianyang solved the array symbols and activated the array, causing the red altar to emit a crimson glow. The following moment, a red portal appeared before the altar. What? Ren Xia looked at him with surprise. You were an array master this entire time? Even Kulas was shocked. Tianyang shook his head and said, No, but I was taught the basics by someone. I never expected such knowledge to come in handy though. During his time with Huang Xiaoli, she would occasionally teach him array symbols for fun. If Tianyang took the array master examinations at this moment, he would barely qualify as a level 1 array master. Anyways, now that I've activated it, let's go. Kulas nodded and walked past Ren Xia. Seeing this, Ren Xia didn't say anything else and followed them into the portal. After exiting the portal, Tianyang and the others found themselves in the middle of an expansive wilderness. Unlike the first section, which was mostly empty plains and mountains, there were trees and living beings roaming around the second section. So where should we go? Tianyang and Kulas turned to look at the person who had just spoken. Why are you making it sound like we're going to be traveling together? Kulas asked her with a deep frown on his face. Why not? Ren Xia shrugged. Not only would it be more entertaining, but it'll be safer if we traveled together. Are you going to refuse traveling with four beauties? What does your appearance have anything to do with this? Regardless, I don't trust you guys. Kulas sneered. Are you afraid that we might attack you or something? We don't have any reason to do such a thing, Ren Xia said. And what reason do you have for wanting to follow us? Ren Xia's gaze glanced at Tianyang's figure for a split second before responding. We're all tired of looking for Han Zexian's legacy, but it's not like we can return home until we find it, so we might as well fool around for a bit. I don't care about your reasons. You're not going to follow me, Kulas said. Ren Xia shook her head and sighed. Who said we are going to follow you? Ren Xia turned to look at Tianyang and continued. This place is crawling with people from the immortal clans. I'd like to see how you will deal with them. Of course, I'm not asking you to let us follow you for free. I can be your guide, and even lead you to a few places with treasures. You bitch. I dare you to say that you don't have any ulterior motives now. Kulas narrowed his eyes at her. Are you jealous that I, your fiancé, have taken interest in another man? Ren Xia chuckled. Humph. I couldn't care less who you talk to or even sleep with since I don't have any feelings for you. But you better not mess with my one and only friend. Tianyang narrowed his eyes at Ren Xia. He had a feeling that even if he refused her company, she would still follow him. In that case, he might as well accept her offer and get something out of it. I don't mind if you follow us, but if I sense you doing anything that could harm us, I will not hesitate to cut you down, he said in a cold voice. Xiao nodded with an innocent smile. I swear that we won't do anything like that. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.